Second.
And the last
little shiner. He's like all swollen and purple. And
Tomatoes or something bad there?
yeah, that's strange.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when we did the vaccine station, all that.
Interesting.
Oh, okay.
So she's interested in the presentation.
Probably my fault. No. Mom, that's good. We did a big area for mountain station because it was recommended. Okay, welcome everybody. It's Tuesday, May the 12th. Another beautiful day here in Nelson. And I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Silks, and the Snayaks people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. There is no late items, and if I could then have an adoption of the agenda as circulated. There's just a lot of happy people in the hallway. Councillor Woodward, there's seconder, Councillor Tate. All those in favor, then that carries. And just for the listening and watching audience, Councillor Lockenberg is attending remotely, and Councillor Pinero is with his boxing team and the national boxing team in Puerto Rico, and as far as I can tell from asking him to send a periodic update, they're doing very well in Puerto Rico, our Canadian team, so otherwise we're all here today. So item number 4 is adoption of the agenda, and we have special meeting minutes of January the 23rd, January the 30th, February 6th, February 17th, March 24th, and public hearing minutes of March 24th, and regular meeting minutes of April 14th. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Tate, second by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Payne, errors and omissions?
I just have a follow-up question. So should I save that for the CAO's report?
Is it containing, like, is there an error in the minutes?
I'm just following up on something I read in the minutes, so I'll save it for the report then.
Please, thank you. All those in favor of the agenda, that the minutes are circulated, and that carries. And so we are moving into a workshop, an educational session. And so staff from Development Services, and we have Valerie, Shannon, and Natalie here. And also remotely, we have Kathleen, Lauren, and Tamsin coming in from BGC. And they're gonna summarize the findings of the Anderson Fell Street Hazard and Risk Assessment, followed by a risk management policy and roadmap recommendations. So this is gonna take most of our time up until dinner. So I'm going to hand it over to Natalie, and you can take the lead and get started, I guess.
Okay, that's great. Val's gonna introduce the project, and then we will hand it over to the consultants. So I'll just give some context to the presentations we're about to see. I'll be quick because I know time is limited. In 2022 and 2023, the city completed a high-level assessment of 4 local creeks. The goal was to understand what hazards may be linked to these creeks. The study ranked the creeks to show which ones would be higher priority for more detailed work. And it also recommended that the city create a policy framework to manage these types of hazard more consistently, and also guide how hazard mapping or information is used in decision making. After this work, the city secured grant funding to complete 2 projects. One was the Anderson Creek Detailed Hazard Assessment, and the second one was the Risk Management Policy Framework. So these 2 studies have been completed and are now presented to you. We have the consultants with us today to present the findings and answer questions. I'll also note that they're only with us for the workshop. When we come back later for the regular council meeting, it'll be just staff. So as much as possible, if you have questions, ask them now that we have the experts with us. If more questions come up later, that's okay too. We'll do our best to answer them, and if we need to, we can come take these questions away and follow up with you later. So Kathleen, I'll hand it over to you.
So I just want to ask, do you then want, maybe to Kathleen and your team, do you want me to recognize counselors in the room that have a question when they have it, or are there some natural breaks as we go through this presentation? How would you like this? It's always a bit challenging when you're remote and we're in the room, and is there a flavor for how you'd like to deal with questions?
I have left it right now where there's room to ask questions at the end of each project, because there's 2 projects to present. However, I'm not too fussed, so if there are questions as we go along, feel free to ask them, but if they're preventing me from getting through the presentation at some point, I might have to switch it to just a question period. Does that work?
So that's fine. I'll read the room and decide whether or not the question needs to be answered, like right away after the information you've given. Otherwise, the council now is aware to hold questions till the natural break after each of the 2 presentations. Councillor Payne.
I can wait until the evening session. Mine relates to staff, so.
Okay. There you go. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, thanks for having us. So the consulting team is composed of BGC Engineering and PINA Sustainability. My name is Kathleen Harita, and I'm with BGC, and I was the lead and project manager for both of the projects that we're going to be discussing today. Tamsin Mills is with PINA Sustainability, and she's been our expert in planning and policy and has provided a lot of input into the policy roadmap project. And then Lauren Hutchinson is here as well, and she provided overall project review, and she's with BGC Engineering. And as was said before, the 2 projects we'll be presenting today one is, they're both related to management of flood and steep creek hazards within the city of Nelson. The first one I'll be presenting on is a policy roadmap. So how do we update the policy tools available in the city of Nelson to effectively use your hazard mapping? And then the second is on the detailed study for Anderson Creek, which I have presented for previously, and we'll just be providing a cleaner version of that presentation for the public. First, I want to start off just acknowledging that Tamsin, Lauren, and I are calling in from the traditional territories of the Squamish Nation, and are grateful for the stewardship of their land since time immemorial. And the projects we've been working on with the City of Nelson sit on the traditional territories of the Ktunaxa, Sinixt, and Silks First Nation. I've included this. It's a disclaimer from the City of Nelson, and it's provided with both of our reports. And the intention behind this is just to state that the work that's being presented today is prepared by BGC and PINA, and not by the city. The purpose of these reports is to support the city in their decision making around hazard and risk management. Okay. So the agenda that I have are to start a bit with why are we here and what has led us to these studies. So I'll spend 5 minutes there. Then I'll talk about the policy roadmap project. And then I set aside 15 minutes for a discussion there. Then I plan to talk about the Anderson Creek detailed study and then have a longer period available for questions, about 30 minutes is the plan. So the purpose behind looking at these flood and steep creek hazards now is this is proactive work and not reactive, looking at a new danger that's been identified to the city. The idea is that these studies are the first step in planning for these hazards within the city of Nelson. and making sure that Nelson is resilient to these natural hazards in a changing climate over time and can manage their development with a clear understanding of what the risks are from these hazards. And as Valerie pointed out earlier, that what led to this work are a few previous studies. So in 2019, BGC Engineering did a regional risk prioritization study for the regional district of Central Kootenay. And as part of that work, they identified steep creek and flood hazards throughout the regional district and prioritized them based on the assets exposed to these hazards and the level of activity of these hazards that has been noticed in the past. And then based on that work in 2023, the City of Nelson worked with BGC to look at the steep creek hazard areas within the City of Nelson and then identify which of those need to be looked at in or were the highest priority to get a detailed assessment. And from that study, the highest priority was Anderson Creek, which I'll be talking about today. And then now we're here to talk about the 2025 studies, which have just finished up. And so that's the detailed hazard and risk assessment for Anderson Creek, and then the policy roadmap study. And just to start off, I want to give a bit of background on how flood hazards are currently managed within the City of Nelson. So the map here shows the flood hazard development permit area that's in the schedule mapping of your official community plan. And so what happens now, so the flood hazard development permit area applies to the areas shown in this mapping and to any land within 15 meters of high water mark of any lake or water course or marsh. And basically within those areas, you'll require, if you're doing any kind of new construction or renovation or repair that changes your foundation area, you'll require a development permit. And quite often with these development applications, it requires a report from a qualified professional that states that the proposed development is safe for the use intended. So that's how flood hazards are currently used or managed within the City of Nelson. And here I've just shown a couple of historical photos just to kind of show the last two severe flooding events that have happened on Kootenay Lake, just because they're interesting. The highest lake level on record was in 1974, and then it was the second highest was actually in June of 2012, so not too long ago. And then here we have steep creek hazards. So steep creek hazards are identified by alluvial fans. So alluvial fans are shown here on the right, and they have like this fan shape, hence the name. And they're created by these mountain creeks that carry water and debris and wood down from the mountainside. And then as soon as you reach what's called the fan apex, it loses confinement of a channel, it spreads out, and it kind of deposits debris, and it creates these fan shapes. And this is how we identify these hazards. And here on the right are the mapped hazards that we have in the City of Nelson. And then here on the left, these aren't photos from Nelson, but they're from Sycamoose Creek, which is near the town of Sycamoose, and then Hummingbird Creek, which is just south of Sycamoose. And they're just to show the hazards that can be associated with steep creek hazards. So here we have pretty severe bank erosion that's undermined a home. And then in this photo here, this was a debris flow that occurred in 1999 where homes were severely damaged and irreparable after the event. So that's just to highlight like why we care about these hazards and managing them well. And then I also just want to point out like the BC flood strategy strongly promotes integrated flood hazard management planning, which is the goal of what we're trying to do here. So integrated flood management planning looks at using both non-structural interventions, so policy, education, that kind of thing, in concert with structural interventions, so structural mitigation that reduces risk. And the idea is that you take a multi-layered approach to make your community more resilient. And that's the objective that we're trying to achieve with these projects. Okay, so now I'll dive into flood and steep creek hazard management policy project.
Question?
So the purpose of this project was to work with the City of Nelson to develop a roadmap towards updating their policy and guidance for development within the flood and steep creek hazard zones. Actually, before I continue, are there any questions on the background piece?
Question,
It's a question break.
yeah. So, Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report. I was just curious, because the report is very focused around what's happening within the city limits. But what about, maybe I missed it, but what about, doing work up in higher levels of the creek to reduce flow speed and debris fields? Is that like something that we can do as a municipality, or is that because that's obviously not in our jurisdiction? But we are affected by, it's like Cottonwood Creek too, it's coming into town. So I was just curious about what mitigation possibilities around that.
Is your question specifically around Anderson Creek or more generally?
As an example, I mean, would preventative work up near the source help? Or are we just dealing within the municipality boundaries?
For Anderson Creek specifically, it wouldn't be particularly helpful to manage it necessarily within the watershed, because it's so steep leading up right until where the fan starts. So you would still, even if you were to manage or capture debris or deflow attenuation further upstream, you would still have to deal with areas of the watershed that are below that, which can still cause some damage. And there aren't any there are examples where it could be really effective. For instance, if you have a known landslide, that can really increase your hazards and that kind of thing. You can often mitigate those, but that's kind of more when there's a very obvious driver within the watershed that's kind of leading that hazard. Whereas for Anderson Creek, it's more that collective flow of water accumulating and carrying debris from all of the watershed that drives the hazard there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was it. That was our only question.
Okay, perfect. I will keep going then. So I'm starting with the policy roadmap project, just I think it gives a bit of context over the overall management. So the purpose of this project was to develop a roadmap to provide to the city towards updating their policy and guidance for land use development in these flood and steep creek hazard zones that effectively uses the hazard mapping that they already have. So the project included compiling all of that hazard mapping. We also conducted a review of best practices used in other jurisdictions, really focused on Western Canada, but we also looked internationally. And the purpose of that is just to really understand what has worked other places and what has been tried but hasn't worked so well, so that we can provide guidance that hopefully will work best within Nelson. We also had engagement with city staff and qualified professionals and other external interest holders with the intention of providing more information about the context within the city of Nelson and what recommendations makes most sense for the city itself. Then the development of the policy roadmap, and the last component of this project was developing some educational materials for the public. I'll note that this project doesn't result in updated policy and that there are still a few steps for the city to take before any of this would be integrated into policy, and that includes a legal review and further engagement with the public. So I'll start with just a really brief overview of what's done in other jurisdictions with a focus on steep creek hazards. Steep creek hazards are generally captured within development permit areas, and they really strongly rely on qualified professionals to provide site-specific assessments of hazard risk and then what mitigative actions need to be taken to meet that safe for the use intended. That's really, really common in all of the research that we did. And the table below are some examples within BC that we've looked at closely, including the District of Squamish, Fraser Valley Regional District, North Vancouver, and the Columbia Shuswap. The RDCK is a bit different in that they tend to manage their hazards through a floodplain bylaw, but that's related more to being a really large regional district and where it's really hard to use development permit areas effectively. In here, I'm looking to just summarize the engagement gap assessment and the gaps that we identified in the current policy that we wanted to address with this policy roadmap. And I've split it into 3 categories. So the first is incorporating the existing Steep Creek hazard mapping into some sort of policy documentation. So right now, the Steep Creek hazard mapping from previous studies and the detailed study on Anderson Creek is not in any existing policy documentation. And there's no guidance on what's appropriate for managing land use within these Steep Creek hazard areas. So that's a gap that we wanted to address. The second is we really want to increase transparency for applicants on the development approval process and what their requirements will be. And so this includes applicants understanding what the expectations are for them and whether, like, when they'll have to get a qualified professional to come and assess their land, and when they're going to be in a hazard zone or not as well is really, really important, because that's not always clear right now. And the second piece is updating the existing policy language in flood hazard areas and the language on exemptions to make that very clear for applicants. And then the third category is we really want to gain a better understanding of when a qualified professional is needed and what their role would be in the whole development approval process. And examples of that are when someone, a homeowner, is doing modifications to a creek, which could be erosion protection to protect their property, or putting any bridges or infrastructure around the creek. It's not clear right now in the current policy what the requirements would be and when a professional engineer needs to be engaged. So that's a gap that we see that we need to fix. And then we also would like to, speaking with many qualified professionals that have to define that safe for the use intended, it was really important to gain clarity on what do these qualified professionals need to provide in the reporting, and how do they define safe, and how do they make that consistent from property to property. So the outcome of the project and the recommendations we provided included 4 components. So the first is updating the language in the flood hazard development permit area to increase the clarity around exemptions and what the requirements are. Second is adding in a Steep Creek hazard development permit area that takes into account the existing mapping and provides guidance on safe development. And I'll talk more about this in the next couple of slides. The third is adding in terms of reference for qualified professionals that outlines the requirements for flood and Steep Creek hazard and risk assessments. So what this will do is standardize the reporting requirements and the level of effort for qualified professionals so that they know what they need to do to meet that safe requirement. And it also supports city staff in when they receive these reports and being able to compare it to the terms of reference and make sure all of those requirements have been met. And then the last component is we provided some options for adopting a risk tolerance policy that defines safe in terms of life safety risk for the city of Nelson. And I'll just talk a little bit more about this second piece, the Steep Creek hazard development permit area, because it's the largest change that we're proposing. So I'm just bringing back this map that I showed at the beginning. So this is the Steep Creek hazard areas, the existing mapping that you have within the city of Nelson. So you'll see in the Fairview neighborhood, we have these hazard zones that are delineated. I'll be talking more when I talk about the Anderson Creek project, what each of those zones mean. But for now, just for a detailed, an area that has had detailed mapping, you'll have the zones get delineated into different hazard areas that go from very low to very high. And then for areas that haven't received detailed study, they're just represented by this orange outline. And what we've proposed for managing those areas is a little bit different. So I'll start first with our proposed management for the detailed hazard zones. So here I'm showing the hazard zones and then the proposed approach. So in hazard zones from moderate to very high, there are no very high hazard zones in Anderson Creek, but for the purposes of completeness of this policy, we included it because you can have very high hazard zones. So for these 3 hazard zones, a qualified professional would be required to specifically conclude whether a site is safe for the intended use for any development permit. And then in low and very low hazard zones, which represents most of the Fairview neighborhood, the recommendation would be that applicants follow minimum flood construction level guidance provided within the DPA, or applicants could get a qualified professional report that establishes the flood construction level and other site-specific mitigation measures for them that satisfy the intent behind that FCL and still establishes and concludes that safe for the intended use. And then here I describe areas without detailed mapping. So here are most of the fans shown in purple. And these we recommend treating the same as a moderate to very high hazard zone because we don't know very much about the hazard in these areas. And so what that means is a development application that comes within these hazard zones would require a qualified professional report stating the use that concludes whether a site is safe for the use intended. For the Cottonwood Creek fan and channel, we're proposing something a little bit different. There has been study of the lower fan, and our understanding it is a bit more of an overland flood hazard area. And so what we've proposed here is that we have an interim policy for the Cottonwood Creek fan and channel, where we recommend a flood construction level of 1 meter and an interim erosion setback of 30 meters from the natural boundary, or an applicant could get a qualified professional report. And the reason we're recommending an interim policy here is that we've also recommended that Cottonwood Creek is the next creek to receive detailed study from the city of Nelson. And it's because it is an area that already has a really high density of development, and we expect there to be a pretty high exposure of economic risk there.
May I ask a question?
So the next steps for the city of Nelson from the completion of this project is to obtain a legal review of our recommendations and the proposed policy roadmap, and then just to look into funding for pursuing the detailed studies of the fans for knowledge of the hazard and risk is limited, with the next priority being Cottonwood Creek because of its existing density of development. Yeah, and here I paused for questions and I saw a hand raised, so.
Forward.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is about Cottonwood Creek because it borders right along a highway. So I was wondering in terms of policy, how do we share the risk factors with Department of Transportation and our own boundaries?
That is a good question. I don't actually have an answer for that at this time on how it would be.
Just because
how we would engage the Ministry of Transportation for that.
Cottonwood Creek runs, well, yeah, it runs right along the highway from Cottonwood Creek all the way into town. So there would have to be some kind of shared responsibility, I would imagine.
The RD as well.
And
To clarify the question, is the question related to how we would communicate the risks, or is there a shared responsibility for managing risks between various jurisdictions?
yeah, I would say in my mind, there would have to be some shared, because the road is a critical road going to Salmo. and the creek, like if the creek got really big and angry, it could wash out sections of that road. So where does liability end and theirs begin, or do we have to do it as a shared undertaking?
I think it depends on what you're talking about. So if you're talking about how will we collaborate to better understand the hazards and risks, that might be a slightly different conversation than if we get to such a point as we determine that there needs to be some form of mitigation. How will we work together on the mitigation approaches? In a general sense, leveraging existing provincial funding to help advance the understanding through hazard and risk assessments is typically quite an effective approach for jurisdictions. And you could partner, for example, with the RDCK, who would have shared interest in this. Generally, where you're getting provincial funding, MOTT won't put in additional funds to understand hazards and risks. If you get to such a point that there is a decision made that there should be investments in risk reduction, then it would really need to start with a collaborative discussion between the various stakeholders as to what your shared objectives are and what mechanisms for funding are available. There's not, in my experience, there's not a one size fits all. Here's what you can expect for the funding collaboration. It's more of a case by case process where you have to meet with, in this case, MOTT and RDCK and work on how are you going to potentially collaborate.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Payne?
I just noticed that on the list of comparators, it was only regional districts that were listed there. Are there no municipalities that would be like, District of Squamish, I guess.
District of North Vancouver has a Steep Creek development permit area. Town of Gibson's has one. There's quite a few municipalities that do have development permit areas for debris flows, alluvial fans, steep creek hazard, all these types of hazards.
What we're comparing ourselves to. So District of Squamish is the
Squamish.
municipality of Squamish. They just have a.
Yeah, as well as, I guess the District of North Vancouver is,
Yeah, got it.
so.
Okay, I see no other hands up here in the room, so please feel free to get on to part 2, I guess we're at.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I expect there will be more questions on this one. I'm just going to be presenting mostly the hazard and risk assessment results for the Anderson Creek detailed hazard and risk assessment and our recommendations for risk reduction for the city to plan for in the years to come. So the study included 3 main components. So the first is the hazard assessment. So this is determining how often the hazard may occur and how big of an impact it is and where is it likely to go within the Fairview neighborhood. And the output of the hazard assessment is that hazard map that I showed a little bit earlier, and we'll talk about in more detail in the next slide. The second component is a risk assessment. So in that, we evaluate life safety risk and compare the life safety risk to thresholds established in other municipalities in BC to define what is tolerable, and see whether the life safety risk is tolerable on the fan or is not. And then we also look at economic risk and quantify the economic damages that we may expect from floods and debris floods over the next 50 years on Anderson Creek. And then the last component is risk reduction. So looking at what are the non-structural and structural mitigation that we can plan for to reduce the risk on Anderson Creek fan in the long term. That is cost effective and can be practically implemented. So here is the Anderson Creek detailed hazard map in much closer view. So you can see their hazard zones are from very low to high. There are only 2 parcels in the high hazard zone. It's mostly the creek itself and then actually the road along Elwyn Street, where modeling shows the creek to avulse during larger events. And then we have areas of moderate hazard zone here and in here. And one thing I want to draw your eye to are these blue stars. I'm going to go over the recommended mitigation in a few slides, but I put them in here to show the value of some of the mitigation. So I have the mitigation I'll be recommending is in 3 phases. Phase 1, I understand the city has already secured funding for implementing, so it should be coming up soon. So the first is a repair of a boat or road berm up here. And what I've shown here is an outline in black, and basically implementing that mitigation allows us to reduce this hazard zone from low and moderate to very low and low. And small mitigation that we're proposing that allows like all of this area to become low, and we take away this little hot spot. So I show that to show the value of the mitigation that we're proposing, but also just like how much the city is already planning on implementing this in the short term. So what do these hazard zones mean? So moderate and high are where we're a little bit more concerned about life safety risk, which is why in the policy roadmap, there was a lot more stringent requirements on needing that qualified professional and that professional reliance model to provide a safer intended use. Where in low and very low, we're expecting more overland flooding, sedimentation around the house, so some damage potentially to properties to roads, but life safety risk is less of a concern. So going through them each, like I have a description that includes the likelihood of structural damage, and then description of the life safety risk to people. And I'll provide that. That's provided in each zone for the report. So essentially in the high and moderate zones, there's some potential for structural damage to buildings, and it can be potentially unsafe to people on the first floor and basements in the high hazard zone. And then in the moderate zone, there's some life safety risk to more vulnerable individuals on the first floor or in basements of buildings. Whereas when you move to the low and very low hazard zone, it's very unlikely that you'll have experience any structural damage. And people in homes are generally safe. In a low hazard zone, it may be unsafe to be outside, like if you're trying to drive your car or if you're standing in the roadway, the water might be moving too swiftly. And then in a very low hazard zone, you're actually very unlikely to experience any kind of damage, and it's just generally safe. So that's how the zones are laid out. So moving on to the risk assessment. So for Anderson Creek, we looked at the probability of death of an individual. So this is looking at individual life loss risk. And it evaluates the likelihood of the loss of a single person in a house. And on Anderson Creek, we found that the probability of death of an individual was less than 1 in 10,000 per year at the 2 properties in the high hazard zone. This is within the tolerable levels in other Canadian jurisdictions that have established risk tolerance criteria. So, and that includes the District of Squamish, District of North Vancouver, and a few others. And the Regional District of Central Kootenay is also working on a risk tolerance policy that uses this threshold. And so it doesn't mean there is no life safety risk, but that it's within tolerable levels that have been established over many years and precedents within BC. So moving on to the economic risk. So the economic risk assessment, the purpose of it, or the value in doing an economic risk assessment, is it's really, really helpful when seeking funding for mitigation, because what it does is it looks at what are the estimated losses from these types of events over a period of time, and what are the expected economic impacts that may be borne by the city and the homeowners and insurance over that period of time. So we calculated for the Anderson Creek fan, looking at infrastructure damage, bridges and culverts, and for buildings and properties, the net present value over 50 years was estimated to be between $19 and $32 million. So net present value is a way of looking at, what's the likelihood of these events over the next 50 years and the costs, and then what would that cost be in present day dollars if you had to take all of those events that might occur and pay for it all today. That's what the net present value is. So here's like the most exciting part of the outcome of these projects. So that our recommendations on how to reduce the risk over time. So going back to that BC flood strategy, we split it into structural and non-structural components. So the non-structural recommendation was working on the policy roadmap project, which I already presented on. And then the structural mitigation that we were proposing is split into 3 phases, with phase 1 already planned for 2026. So phase 1 focuses on the highest priority repairs. So these are really low level effort repairs to infrastructure around the city with a really high value in terms of reducing the hazard. And it includes 3 items. So the first is repairing the low point in the dike at Sabota Road and repairing the erosion protection. So this picture is probably not really helpful in showing the low point, but essentially there's a gap in the dike in this area here where flow could avulse and head towards some homes. And then here's highlighting the missing erosion protection along the dike. You can see gaps, and so that needs some repairs. And then the second is installing a jersey barrier on the north bank at the 7th Street culvert. So you can see that in this photo here. So that's just installing a jersey barrier just on this side, and that would prevent water from being able to overtop and head down the road in this direction. And then the last is installing a debris rack upstream of Elwyn Street culvert. So here on the far right are some photos just showing what a debris rack can look like. And the idea is it gets offset from the Elwyn Street culvert so that when that debris rack gets plugged with debris, it doesn't also plug the Elwyn Street culvert, which has been a consistent issue. In phase 2, the overall goal is improving the flow conveyance capacity of the Anderson Creek Channel from the fan apex all the way down to the lake. This phase is expected to achieve the greatest reduction in risk from overland flooding, because the Anderson Creek Channel, particularly in this lower section, is actually not large enough to convey the design debris flood event that we expect to come down from Anderson Creek. So the upper channel tends to be large enough, but as we get down to this area here, it's actually too small. So phase 2 is pretty large, and it includes putting in berms and erosion protection in this lower channel to increase its conveyance capacity, and then replacing culverts. Each of these red dots are culverts that are undersized and bridges that are undersized. And the idea is to slowly, over time, as funds allow, replace these culverts and make them larger so that they can convey the full debris flood event that we expect on Anderson Creek. And here are some photos of what that channel improvements would look like. So there's kind of 2 options depending on space. So you can use something like geocell walls, as shown here on the side of the channel. And then, or you can do riprap or stone pitching type protection. And here's a picture from Nelson itself, where you can see like one homeowner has actually done this to the channel. Ignore the bridge, because we don't want those there. But
So cute though.
this is a really good example of some of that erosion protection that could be done along there. And then the last phase that we're proposing is capturing sediment that we expect to come down during some of these events. And we propose 2 locations. So here is Elwyn Street and the Elwyn Street culvert. And so just upstream, there's a wider area of channel where we could capture some debris with the use of debris racks and minimal effort. And then the second location we proposed is upstream of Sabota Road. So with the different phases of mitigation that we proposed, we've compared it to that baseline economic risk. And the idea there is like we want to show that the cost of this mitigation isn't grossly disproportionate to the economic risk associated with with this hazard. And so you can see the baseline economic risk was between $19 and $32 million, and our estimate for the mitigation approach, all phases, comes to $6 million over time. So the next steps for the city that we've recommended is implementing, the next steps for the city that they have in plan, I understand, is implementing this phase 1 mitigation in 2026. Pursue funding to advance the recommended mitigation for phases 2 and 3, and incorporating the Anderson Creek mapping into their policy documentation. And that is all for me. So now we have time for questions.
Councillor Tate?
Thank you so much. I have a question on slide 33. When you say net present value over 50 years, do I take that to understand that by implementing these phases that we would expect them to not have to be renewed for 50 years? Or that we would expect not a water event to occur within those 50 years? Help me understand the 50 years, please.
Yes, absolutely. And I might ask Lauren to help me out here, because this is definitely her area of expertise more than mine on explaining this. But net present value, the way it works is you look at the probability of occurrence of these events, and then so you look at each of these events, figure out how much damage they can cause, and then you assume the probability of that event over a 50-year timeline.
Okay.
And then you use a discount rate to kind of, if you add up all of those costs, assuming that each year there's a probability, like for instance, the 20-year event costs almost $8 million. A 20-year event has a 5% likelihood of occurring any given year. So you take that 8 million times 5% over all of the next 50 years, and that's your cost. And then you apply inflation to that to bring it back into today's dollars. Does that make any sense? So it's basically what it's trying to say is, like, given the likelihood of these events and the damage that it can cause over the next 50 years, this is how much you might have to spend for repairs from these events.
Thank you.
What I could add to that a little bit is, so you asked, if you were to implement these mitigations, would you not have to do anything else for 50 years? And that's a little bit more of a function of the design, what we call the design event. So if a mitigation is designed for a 50-year event, the intention would be that when you experience an event that happens on average over a long period of time, every 50 years, it's designed to accommodate that event. That's a little bit different than service life. So when we're saying 50 years, oftentimes when you make an investment in infrastructure, you want it to last for 50 years or 75 years. So it's not that the 50 years is a particularly magic number. It just provides us a basis to compare. You would, if you had these mitigations in place, you would expect some operations and maintenance costs over the service life. So you would want to plan for those, and those would be integrated into the costs here as well.
In the minus 50 to plus 100%, those costs. The costs of infrastructure.
That's right. That's right. So what happens when you have a design process is this is very early stages. These are conceptual. We're trying to give you numbers that can inform planning. When you move ahead into future phases of design, as you know more and you refine them, then the uncertainty and the costs get smaller. But at this stage of design, it's just to give you planning level numbers to help make decisions. And then when you actually get into material quantity estimates and understand, what are the costs of those materials at the time, then the uncertainty comes down.
Thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is about, in my mind, I'm kind of seeing like a matrix that would be developed out of this information where our staff, if there was a combination of events and weather and rain and all these events building up, that our staff would have a matrix to work with flowing from this information, and you'd be checking the boxes as it came, like, okay, that we're high temperature, got a lot of rain coming, the creek is increasing and then checking the boxes so that you could actually get out in front using this information and make sure your channels are clear, and is that part of this process? Or is that up to us to develop as a city?
That wasn't part of this scope of work.
That's-
So emergency response
Yeah.
planning and support wasn't part of the scope of work. That being said, like the information provided could be used to help support developing that kind of thing. And I believe it's already led to a little bit of like we've had a few discussions with the emergency planning department. And there's a flood and steep creek catch basin policy in place already that Valerie could probably speak to better than me on, that helps like make sure that the culverts are clear, and particularly around freshet and where these things, where we're more at risk for these types of events. So the city does have some measures in place already, but it wasn't part of the scope.
Yeah, we have, as I mentioned, we have plans for this. We see it when, we start ticking off those boxes for those conditions. The most obvious of those is we park our backhoe up at the Elwyn Street culvert where that trash rack is, or debris rack. What something like this does is informs us of sort of where the low points are, where, easy actions are that we can do. So a good example is there was reference to the Jersey barrier on 7th north side. That's a really easy thing to just put in when those boxes start getting tipped, because it actually does, sort of impinge on, somebody's use of that area. So it'd just be like an emergency response type thing, saying, okay, well, we're seeing the, conditions consistent with higher risk. So then, we start rolling out our response plan based on that. That is something that we've built over the years through experience, and then you get modeling like this done, provides you more data for perhaps, experiences that you haven't had yet of what to expect and what you can do to mitigate those impacts when they do occur, if they occur.
Right, supplemental, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. And so I guess my other question around that emergency management is that if let's say there was a huge snowpack and it's melting quick, or let's say some of the logging that's happened up there, or maybe there's a wildfire that goes on, like that would change this whole dynamic of like what's coming down the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So then I guess we'd have to update that matrix as those changes are occurring. It could be it's kind of a live situation.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, and maybe I'll let BGC speak to the part about it, well, what I could say is, a major wildfire up there in our watershed would be an issue for many reasons, one of which would be, yes, the increased risk of debris, flood or flow, and what that would look like. So I think we'd be going back to the drawing board on a lot of that stuff, probably calling BGC to say, hey, how does this impact it? As far as, higher snowpack, this year we have about 100% of normal at the higher elevation. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we start looking at. But the sort of antecedent conditions for a given flood event or given scenario don't significantly change our response plans unless it is like sort of shift change. Like, okay, there's a major wildfire and it took care, went through our watershed. Now there's a lot less. There's no organics up there, there's no trees up there, rain's very destructive, that's gonna mobilize more sediment, et cetera, right? So I would say that our response plans continue to grow. Again, modeling like this helps support us in those efforts. But if we see a very significant change, then we would be talking to the experts again.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note that, yeah, we're gonna mitigate some of this potential damage. Right? We're not gonna just let that creek overflow. We're gonna take all the steps to, to mitigate the damage from an emergency management point of view, and but it doesn't mean longer term, if we can eliminate that, as much of that risk as we can, then we want to do that as well. But we wouldn't just say we're gonna incur this loss in on every 20 on a 20-year event, because we're gonna try to mitigate that with our you know, by sandbagging and all those other things that communities do when there's those high water events. And the other thing I think to note here is, you know, this isn't the loss to the city, this is the loss to the city and property owners. So that's why you need, you know, that senior level of government funding. You know, it's not, you know, that needs to, you know, it'd be nice if the insurance companies came in because they're mitigating their potential losses down the road, but that's why we're seeking federal money. If this was all our loss, we'd probably do the math and say, yeah, it's worth us investing in this, but this isn't all on our books. It's mostly on property owners' books.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Payne and then I'll have Councillor Page.
Mine's just on the $620,000, so I saw that part of that's gonna be grant funding, so we did receive that grant funding. Did I hear something that we have got that?
No, I think we've budgeted to do this, or at least some of this work, the lesser cost part of this work.
Yeah, there's a couple pieces in phase one,
It
Shannon,
said
correct?
there's something in the 2026 budget, but it
There
also said
is, yeah,
grant
so
funding.
design work, so the two items that were in phase one, Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong here, is the design work to repair the local berm and then also that trash, or the, debris.
Yeah, phase one is 2 avulsion points, the debris rack, and then some armoring, but I completed an expression of interest for grant funding.
Yeah.
That
that's
was
what I
due
read.
on May 1st, so I just got an email for additional documents. So I don't expect to hear back for a while.
And how much was that for?
I shot a little high. I applied for 4.3 million, because I also included some of the phase 2 culverts, but I was very clear that it's very clear that there's phase 1 and then phase 2, if funding allowed.
Awesome, sounds great. I love shoot high.
Yeah, and to the point about what is being done this year as well, we're going to be in our current budget, getting some of that design work done for those low points on the berm this year.
So the current budget is $620,000 then? No.
No,
No,
That's
just
what
the,
I'm trying to,
yeah, so the design work, you know, it's
I didn't find that number.
I can't recall if it was in the report or not, but
I
Design
found it in
work
the
is less
report,
than
I didn't
that.
find it in the budget.
yeah, it's usually 10% of, you know, as a, you know, between 5 and 10% of project costs. It can go higher than that, but
Okay, so the design work is on 2026 work plan,
yes.
so that $620,000 is not all 2026 then? Okay, that's what I wasn't clear on, thank you.
And as GM pointed out, you know, I think that Jersey barrier, you know, not installing it permanently, but I assume we have Jersey barriers that we.
Sure do, yep, they're handy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we have, so some of that was part of that 620 as well, but we have that in-house, so.
Great.
Councillor Page.
How are we gonna start integrating this into our budgets? We've got more of these coming down the pipe in the coming years per creek, so how are we gonna be taking these formalized numbers we're getting now and start baking them into property tax and budgetary 5-year plans and an actual capital plan attached? Like, obviously there's pieces to it, but
Yeah, I think most of it is contemplated being grant funded. Every other communities have this grant funded, so. Yeah, we don't see at this stage, unless the council wants to make another decision that this would be property tax funded. We have enough
I hear you on that approach, so do we really have an expectation we'll get 100% grant funding? Like, once we add it all up, once the pressures become more apparent across the board in future election cycles, do we anticipate that capital program of improvement of strengthening ourselves against hazard will be 100% versus some other mix? And I don't know if I think it would be 100, so it feels like there should be a capital program we're developing to go with this.
At present, they have been funded these
Okay.
100%. So, yeah, what that looks like going forward, I think you need to keep an eye on. But what that is, we'll get some sense from this grant application that we just
I think
put
whether they
forward.
fund it or not, it's still like, what is our program gonna look to capture and articulate that work and to know what those funds are gonna be spent on and to know what phases are gonna come in and to know what grants we'll be going after. Sometimes we'll go fast and sometimes we'll go slow and sometimes we'll wanna bridge a project to another project. We would still need that body of work anyway to go fast through federal and senior orders of government funding. So what does that look like in budget cycles 2027, 2028?
Yeah, I think it's primarily you doing the design work, right? So that you're ready, and as we're doing in 2026, we're doing the design work for phase one.
Okay.
And I think, Shannon just put that grant forward. We'll see what information they require, but I think we, with this work that we've done with BGC, that that is a long ways towards what we need to do. Second phase is again looking for grant funding to do Cottonwood Creek, and again that informs what that capital plan is. And as you saw here, those are plus or minus some high percentages. So, but that's when you start to get into more of that detailed design work, that starts to inform that, how much, what the real cost of these projects are.
And I guess, not to say that it doesn't, it precludes work elsewhere, but like the money that we're using for the design work in 2026 comes out of the parcel tax that we charge for storm, right? So we're treating this as our stormwater system or part of our stormwater system in the city.
Mhm.
So you do have a stream of funding. That's something that, if council wanted to get more, have funds identified, that's currently the tool that we're using to pay for the design work this year. So
Okay.
just to give you some context there.
That sounds good. That sounds like makes sense. Could I have a supplemental?
Yes, you can.
So now that we're operating our large GIS system and we're bringing in the details of these designs, and we're also inducing property owners themselves to go out and get professional opinions, have engineering done. Engineering we're accepting and we're yay or nay as we do this mitigation work and people do things to protect their individual properties. How is all that information going to be collected and brought together inside of our GIS system, and how will we be building that as a project from a mapping perspective, from a capturing the data that these extra tasks are causing within the professional market? Like, how will we be able to look at this and support that planning into the future with GIS? Like, are we gonna dedicate resources, and is our consultant that we're hiring on to do applications, or there pieces of this that can start coming to life inside of that project?
So first off, we're probably a ways away from, in our GIS project, from, looking at individual property data as far as like characteristics pertaining to flood levels goes. One of the things that you can certainly anticipate seeing is having, this mapping as a layer that you can turn on in our GIS function, right? And any future work, so that you could actually, residents can click on that and see that detailed hazard map presented on our mapping. Similarly, it would be very clear the DPA areas, development permit area boundaries, that would be able to be turned on, and what is required there. So I think, from an early phase, that's easier stuff to upload, starting to figure out how we take the individual, essentially building permit data and show if, property's been, built to a certain flood construction level that, makes it safe for the use intended, or that we've received a report from them, that's something that we haven't discussed yet.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Councillor Payne?
I'm just curious, it's a small thing, but I can't get my head away from it. So phase 3 captured debris, the dotted line, the boundary of the city of Nelson, and then there's parallel basin, which is outside of that. So is that something that we work together with the RDCK on? And where it says sediment basin in the legend, note 5, where would I find that note 5? Is that in the report? Because I can't see it in the presentation. Am I?
Ooh, yes, it would be in the report. Sorry about that. And I don't know off the top of my head what it says.
But just to go find that because I would have a hard time finding my way back. Okay. And that paraphrase then would be an RDCK thing.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily. It's in the rural area. It doesn't, the jurisdiction is probably province, not the
Oh,
RDCK.
Okay, thank you.
But,
Yeah.
you know, if it was something that was also protecting life loss, property damage in the rural area, then you would partner with the rural area.
It's not.
If it's not, then it's probably a city project, right?
Thank you. That's what I want to understand.
Yeah. And I think that relates to the question that Jesse, you asked is, yeah, some of that mitigation work is not necessarily within the city of Nelson, but in this case, that's a city of Nelson project because it's protecting homes and properties in the city of Nelson, not the rural area. If there was a big rural subdivision up there in the rural area, then you probably in conjunction to do that project together.
Councillor Payne, follow-up.
I just figured I realized I can figure it out myself. Anderson Creek Reservoir. Tell me where it is. I couldn't find it on the map.
Sorry, may I just clarify what the CIO was saying?
Yes, Councillor Ward.
So you're saying, we can do our work here in the city, but you're saying, outside is gonna have to be, like, we can only advocate.
No, we would get permitting from, the permitting we get is from the province, who's the landowner, right?
Right.
It's jurisdiction. Regional districts, local government, just as we are, they have to get
Right, okay.
permitting from the province and others and, you know, over other people's lands and et cetera. So, and all I'm saying in this case, there's no rural property here, so the regional district's not in,
Right.
you know, they don't have an interest in that. Like, they don't manage, you know, crown lands,
Sure.
right? The crown does. You know, they could have zoning and other things, but generally the property, you know, in this case, the province manages those lands, so our permitting, et cetera, would all be working with, you know, the party that has jurisdiction over those lands.
Councillor Payne?
Okay, I couldn't find the Anderson Creek Reservoir when I Googled. So where is the Anderson Creek Reservoir?
It's
Just upstream of the trails, the rail trail.
On the map?
Well, like on this map or?
It is kind of close to the parallel basin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right
Is it,
here, kind of.
okay, so
It's like there. It's just upstream of Fell Creek where it joins in, so it's just up here, right on the corner.
I wanted to just understand boundary wise. Thank you.
right, and it's a out of ground storage. It's the Anderson Creek Reservoir, right?
And there's the consideration that that may fall under the dam legislation.
Yep. That's Anderson Creek Reservoir?
It was in the report.
And we've already notified the regulator about that.
Yeah. That's, okay. Just want to make sure I understand all that potential
Yeah.
costing funding opportunities.
And just for completeness, I won't read it verbatim, but the note 5 that you were referring to is essentially acknowledging that some future work would be required to refine the site location for the parallel basin, and that you could expect to need geotechnical investigation to inform that as well. So at this stage, it's showing concept and a location, and note 5 is just acknowledging that more work needs to be done as you advance to future phases of design.
Thank you.
Okay, going once, going twice. Any more questions come to anyone's mind? I would just like to say that, you know, we've heard some of this before, and it's great that you've come back again to sort of explain it another time. I mean, I think every time we hear it, we see the graphs, you know, we see the alluvial fans. I think it becomes clearer and easier for us to understand, with the hopes then when people are asking us that we can make a cogent explanation of what it is, because it is very complicated. People don't want to hear complicated. They just kind of have simpler questions that they ask. But I think it's been great. I mean, every time I look at this, it just gets to be clearer to me as we could be looking at over the next few years. We're not sitting here doing nothing. I mean, risk, the word is always a big red flag to council, and any council that ignores risk does it at their own peril, and it's not just about steep creeks, it's about, you know, safety and everything else. I mean, risk is something that has to be paid attention to, and one of the things I do appreciate is that the city staff, we've gone out to third-party contractors like yourself, BCG, BGC, and, you know, to help us mitigate our risk and to give assurance that we are, as a province, and to our residents, that we are looking at risks and we're not just like burying them in the backyard somewhere. So again, I just want to thank you for all your work. And Councillor Payne has another question.
The mayor just reminded me of a question that I had written down. So it said you're developing public education materials. So is that something the consultant does, or is that something our staff is doing? Because I did go on the website and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of information there right now, which I found that's a lot of education material. So how are you taking that further? And if it's not a consultant question, then we can talk about it later if that's better.
They did develop educational materials, and it's at the very bottom of the policy package that you got.
Okay, I did not get all that.
Yes, no, that's okay. So
Thank
they
you.
did develop one for us, and I think it's in a draft format currently.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the materials we provided the Canva files to the city of Nelson so that they can edit them and produce as you like for the final version. And what we've produced is educational material around what are steep creek hazards and how to protect your home and property based on our experience working on these types of projects and what we've seen from these hazards. Focus.
Okay, Councillor Payne, Page now has a follow-up question.
Okay, get ready. The Home Safe program. How much have we, if at all, or could we look at how we're doing that program delivery and how that could, some of that funding architecture framework could be used for some of the mitigation stuff, no?
That's funding comes from
Fortis.
no, well,
Is
the
hazard
Home Safe
not-
program is funded
hazard
by
not one of the things?
FCM for GHG reduction, and from Fortis
For energy efficiency.
For energy
Efficiency and hazard.
You could create a loan program, the same, there's no granting available, but, you know. I
I'll
think,
leave that one on the table.
You know, I think one of the things that from this report that we have to look at it, you know, is that, you know, a lot of the work required is, you know, to improve conveyance, right? To make sure that the channel can actually, you know, contain
That's a lot of
what's
work.
coming down. So, you know, that's a lot of work for us. We're gonna be searching for grants for that. You know, overall, the risk was quite low, as was the finding from this, right? Both in, you know, overall impact, you know, the risk to life was, you know, very low, except for a very small number of properties. So, you know, I think it's interesting, and you know, your consideration might be it'd be very interesting in a regional district perspective where you have many more hazards, and there isn't the density or, you know, the form of government that could actually address those issues. So even if you were to take somewhere, you know, like the Duhamel fan, that is really challenging, you know, the cost to mitigate the impacts there are, you know, as far as from a structural, you know, what you would do in the stream or, you know, debris ponds or sediment ponds is you know, really expensive, not a lot of homes there compared to that overall cost. So, you know, when you look at that from a larger perspective of the entire regional district, it might make more sense to offer some sort of loan rebate type program where there's some real stuff that people should probably be doing on their property to protect their homes. You know, one of the things that we see here or understand here is, you know, yeah, there will be some homes that are impacted during, you know, events. Like, you know, nothing's changed from before we received this report to now, right? So people have been living in these homes for many, many decades, you know, I've not seen those impacts. So not to say that they won't happen at all, just to say that, you know, the frequency is not there where there's frequent damage, whereas in other places, it might be a better, you know, good tool.
Okay, well, I'll just leave that on the table because I think I do see enough alignment. Some other projects that are being worked on to just reduce barriers, see what works, expand scope, deal with hazards, deal with emissions, you know, deal with the new world we're moving into. So sounds like it's not ready yet, so that's fine, that's great.
Okay, so seeing no further questions, I would like to thank Kathleen and Lauren and Tansen for being here. And yeah, we will be later this evening addressing some bylaws, some policy adoption later this evening. So thank you again for your time. Thank you, staff, for your time. And I'm gonna move on to City Manager's verbal report.
Sure. Not a lot.
Everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, not a lot to report at this stage other than been involved in, well, as a team, we've been doing quite a bit of interviewing for some of these vacant positions, and we should be able to announce some successful candidates in those positions pretty in the near term. So look forward to that. So we're generally quite pleased with the level of candidates we're getting for these positions. Again, you know, it's not like we're getting 20 qualified candidates, but we're at least getting 2 or 3 or 2 to 5 for those positions. So so we're encouraged by that. Collective bargaining, I've been involved in some collective bargaining, and again, we should be able to announce something fairly soon on that front. The other one is 606 Vernon Street, so that's the former Kootenays School of the Arts building. So we've had some productive conversations with Selkirk College. They do feel that they should be able to meet this August timeframe that the arts community would like to see happen. So that's positive news there. Our facility manager continues to kind of look at what kind of work we need to do in those buildings to get them in a leasable stage.
Does that mean they're gonna stop paying rent?
No, we have shared that some deficiencies in that building, they recognize that and will agree to pay rent till the end of the year to help offset some of those costs of
I understand they're in a challenging financial position, but as you say, there were some deficiencies, so if that can work towards that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I brought that forward and they were quite receptive. They're definitely want to be a good partner. The other thing that came up was 10th Street campus, so they continue to lease that. They do not want to see those similar situations happening in that building either, so we've agreed to connect our facility manager with their folks and make sure that we're walking through the facility assessment report and understand what they've done and haven't done, what kind of engineering studies they've done and not done. Sounds like some of that's not handled by the college directly, but more Ministry of Post-Secondary, I guess, or whoever, or maybe forget what the leasing agency here is, but
Can I just ask a follow-up about 606? The equipment that was in there from the CDC, I understand there was some negotiation that the college will give that equipment to the city that will then in turn allow it to be used in the
yeah, it doesn't sound
new-
like it. We need to be the third party in that.
Okay,
No,
so
they're
they've shifted
meeting
that.
directly with the college, and it sounds like they
That
should be
sounds
able to
pretty
donate
positive
it
then.
directly to them.
Okay.
Yep.
Good to know, thank you.
So that's the facilities there. When you're in this building, you probably hear some core drilling every so often. So that's the work on the elevators upgrade on this building. I think that's generally going well. We had a bit of a hiccup the other day where the contractor did something that they shouldn't have, and we had both elevators out of service for a short period of time until they could get them back up and running, or get the one they're not working back up and running, but they managed to do that. FIFA, the World Cup event on June 24th. For all those people, I keep running into people that don't seem to be aware of this at all, so we'll get some more communication out there, but that's going really well. I think I shared last meeting that we hired a coordinator to do that work, and she's working under Sydney Black's wing, and I think we pretty well have all the logistics in place, whether it's fencing and washrooms and all those sorts of things. I think they're just finalizing the site plan. We are going to have some vendors. We won't be charging those vendors. They're vendors that are already at the market. Will be given opportunity to be there. Under their sponsorship agreement, a beer garden is required as they are a core sponsor. We have the Nelson Soccer Association will run that beer garden and be able to make the money off that to go back into soccer in our community. So I think that's a decent win on that front. I don't think there's anything else on the World Cup.
I would just say on FIFA, to the city manager's point, a lot of people still haven't heard about it, and that's because there hasn't been a really significant campaign. There's a lot of really tight rules around this whole event, and one of them is how we market and what we market with. So I understand there's in a couple of weeks, I think, or we're expecting to get sort of what the marketing and promotional side is. So then there will be a big push. So just, in case you are also out chatting to people in the public and they say, FIFA, there will be more of a marketing push coming.
Councilor Woodward has a question.
Thank you. I have two questions. Number one question, are we going to have any way of tracking, like let's say, getting all the information from the hoteliers and the restaurants just to see like how much came in because of this event? Just for future events of this scale, might be interesting to
A good idea, yeah. How do we track?
see what actually it brings in. And the other question is licensing around mobile food vendors in that area around the Rose Garden Cafe, because they have a
Yeah, we're not at Rose Garden, we're at the Lakeside
field.
field.
And is that, but they have a no compete
No.
clause? No? Okay,
Not for the playing fields.
not for the playing fields. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Payne.
This isn't FIFA. Is there anything else, or can I
No,
follow up?
I think that's it for me.
So in the January 23rd minutes, it talked about having an emergency management education workshop for council, considering it's emergency management month. Is there anything on board, or how would we?
I'll have to check with this, I think you're aware, we had some turnover in
Yeah.
emergency management coordinators and which left a vacancy from Heather's old position, so we, Maddie from our office has taken on
Has
that
filled that?
position, so, we can reach out to them, it's probably slipped down the priority list a little bit, but, we can have we'll check to see where that's at on their priority.
I think it just, is increasingly important
Yeah.
that we are able to not only answer the questions that are asked of us, but encourage people. I was out at a meeting on Saturday, and I mentioned that it was Emergency Preparedness Month, and I asked who had their grab and go bags, and a lot of blank stares on that one. So the more we know and can share in the
Yeah.
groups that we're at, I think it's just a really big benefit. Is there gonna be, just came to me now, but the KCR block party, do you know if they're gonna be over there at that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their plans are.
Okay. I have another
Yep.
one. So, from, I think this was the April 14th, that might have been it might have been the January 23rd. There was I'm just wondering what the update is on the Rosemont bike lane, the Rosemont active transportation, because that was mentioned in January as well. Is there anything that we know about that's happening since, it's the summer when we're all out there biking? It's just crazy out there. Do people notice I'm doing the pedal poll once again this year, so I'll be able to give you the updated,
I'm not sure if
Yeah.
advanced that at all.
Sarah, our planner, is working on it. I'll try and recall exactly where we are at. I believe the funding, the larger funding stream was not announced for this year, if I recall.
Yeah, I think they canceled it.
Yeah, but we're still continuing to pursue. Council has committed funds every year.
those funds.
Yeah, so there's some planning around that and what it would look like. There is a general understanding that the previous plans for that route that were done sort of 4 or 5 years ago, they were never taken to a point that was found adequate by the community. So there's some planning going on around additional work and some engagement around that. Alignment, we looked at rapid implementation. That was the big thrust that we gave, and unfortunately in one area of the big S-bend around Vancouver, that just wasn't feasible to rapidly implement it because there are a couple of choke points and that's a major transit route, etc. So continuing to work through that piece, but there is we do have a planner assigned to that file and she is working on it. I can't tell you exactly when to expect sort of the public side of that, but I can tell you that.
But it is for 2026. There will be work done in 2026.
Certainly planning work, yes.
So planning.
Yeah, and one of the things as well is that intersection.
Been on that for a long time.
Well, to be
It's
fair.
complicated, yeah.
Yeah, to be fair,
I've been at the
we lost a
meetings.
planner that was working on it, right? So that came down and then we focused on the Lakeside pathway, the multi-use pathway. So that took the focus around that active transportation. So that's why, it's taken a bit of a hiatus, but then that intersection at Hall Mines and the off-ramp from Salmo and the intersection very well.
Very well.
There's quite a few discussions around that intersection as well with MOTT, because that's seen as sort of the first step that would need to be done to get up there is really figure that out. So
Just having mentioned the multimodal path along the lake, is it going to be marked at some point in time? Because I always feel that the pedestrians are giving me, I don't want to use this term, but I can't think of anything else, the stink eye when I'm riding my bike along there. But I'm assuming that if it's a multimodal path, I'm allowed to ride my bike along there.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of room,
Yeah.
and I'm certainly respectful, but I feel better if there was some sort of marking that it was, like some of them you see where there's a bicycle
Yeah.
and a pedestrian.
Yeah.
So you know that I don't know if there's plans for that and it just hasn't happened, or
Yeah, I don't think that we have plans, that's certainly something we can look into, is just advertising that it's not, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, and you know, boy, we squeezed that road as tight as we could to
I know,
get as much
I
as
know.
we could there, so, yeah, I can look into that.
Not a
Councillor
priority, but bouncing off that idea and not to sideline anything to do with emergency management and steep creeks. But if you're gonna put up a sign that's like people walking, people biking, something that says e-bikes, gear down, big rig. Like if there's pedestrians, simmer down.
Can I just, sorry, that was geared down,
Gear
big
down,
rig?
big rig.
Just hate going like this.
I like
It's
that.
just a finger wag.
Yeah,
And keep off the grass also with the
Oh, yeah.
e-bikes. I'm just shouting at people all the time. They're like, who is that woman?
That was me.
I
didn't know how to
Yeah, I know
get
that
from
police
there.
have a campaign that they've been running to try and govern.
But especially on the multimodal
Right,
spaces.
yeah, maybe it's speed limit, I know that
Yeah,
from experience, I know that you can get speeding tickets in Calgary on your bike along the pathways if you go too fast in the morning when everybody's
Oh,
commuting.
yeah.
Yeah, it's okay,
From
but,
experience.
yeah, I used to commute to work for a while.
And this is before e-bikes, I'm presuming.
Yeah,
just need to create those zones like when you're on your scooter where it turns you off.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're going too fast, it just shuts you down.
okay, if we're on e-bikes.
Councillor Page.
How do we track like the difference, the gap between the deficiency of what the length, what the width would be for a true proper multimodal path, but doesn't require a speed limit and a sign that we wanna bring down the speed because we know we're not there, like that's what I'm hearing, we have long, skinny, high conflict, I get emails from people worried about the speed of traffic that's on there. But how do
we
we track that we probably need another lane, probably need to plan for fatter sections of that is eventually.
I think there's standards.
Yeah,
I
There are the
disagree.
standards.
I disagree. I don't think we need to plan for faster bikes along the
No,
lane.
I
I think we just, everyone needs to slow down. This is the nice little
There's
spot.
other options.
respectful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you could stay on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
stay on the
I
road.
think one of the things that, you know, around the transportation, like active transportation, the biking side of things is, you know, there just needs to be an understanding generally that, you know, with our city, how compact we are, it's gonna be very difficult to have the sort of gold standard of active transportation that you might find in, you know, like Vancouver along the seawall when, like, God forbid you cross one of those bike lanes without looking both ways, right? When we're at the convention center and, you know, and fair enough, cause
Yeah.
people are clipping along, like, you know, you know, if we had enough room to put one of those in, it would not be for a sustained, you know, amount of distance within the town, you know, within the city, without, you know, removing roads, removing lanes, and sure, we might get there one day, but, you know, I think there's just needs to be, to Councillor Tate's point, you know, this idea that, you know, we have shared active transportation corridors, and that's just the way they're gonna be. If you wanna really go along, you know, at traffic speed, you know, you can look into traffic, but, you know, there's,
And we don't have, you know, high volume streets either. It's not like we have, like a Vancouver where you got,
Long street.
yeah, we got, you know, we're.
We're not seeing complaints
system.
come in of any kind? Of interactions, conflicts?
a couple here and there, I mean, of, you know, but I think generally there's complaints that people feel that e-bikers need to slow down and sort of follow the rules of the road.
That's a report, that's a conflict.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, not, to be honest, I haven't, like, as far as coming across my desk generally into the city, we haven't seen any this year, I don't think.
okay.
Can I just go on the shared?
I just wanna caution that we are after 6, but
Yeah.
please
This
finish
is
your
the
question.
last thing that
Well, I
I
mean,
have
until
observed.
somebody else has a question, but go right ahead.
Right, I'll just say it quickly, I have been riding more over to Fairview, I take the bike route. When I get on that bike route, it shows that cars and bikes are going single file down there. I'm going about 25 kilometers an hour and I get passed every time.
On
So,
which
am
side?
am I mistaken? Is that car not supposed to stay behind me?
On the high street?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's supposed to.
Okay. So.
much like, you know, yeah,
is there any way we can communicate that in our communications or, and then a guy actually, like 1 minute, not even 30 seconds passed, pulled into his driveway and starts yelling at me like, what did you want me to do, just drive behind you? And I'm like, well, it's the law,
Yeah.
so I sort of did.
Yeah.
I didn't say it like that, I was quite polite, but yeah, I think people maybe don't understand what that sign means, or it's not big enough, or it needs to flash or something. But it's pretty clear to me that I'm going a good clip, I'm on an e-bike. But still, going around those curves makes me very uncomfortable.
One solution could be lowering the speed limit to a more of
It's
an
30.
e-bike speed. I know, but
Yeah.
like more of an e-bike speed,
Yeah.
that could be a solution.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
There's speed
Um,
bumps already.
We were just there, I didn't wanna miss that one, cause
I have a real short update, Mayor. If we can fit it in.
Anybody starving or should we keep going? Go.
Okay, so just quick updates on a couple things, on the road projects, tomorrow's Wednesday, yeah, tomorrow, Zero Block of Baker will be paving for the, water main work that was happening down there, so it's actually gonna be a closure. Communication would have went out this afternoon, I believe. We're gonna be completed on Josephine on Friday. Out of there, paving, we're waiting to nail down exactly when the pavers are there. We're hoping that we can get them in immediately, but until the pavers come in, we'll be maintaining it. Some of the potholes were getting quite deep as you cross Josephine on Baker there. So just the crews will be paying attention to that, yeah. Keeps people going nice and slow, which is nice, yeah.
no matter how slow
So
you're going on a bike, it's.
yeah, both those projects wrapping up, which is good. I will note, for Emergency Preparedness Week, internally, we did run, our emergency, program tabletop exercise, last week. That was really good, looking at a couple of different scenarios, but really, making sure that staff are feeling comfortable in the Emergency Operations Center or EOC, should it need to be activated. So that was, all staff seemed really engaged and keen, and felt like they had a better understanding, so that was a really positive outcome. And then finally, one thing that people may or may not have noticed, the flag is missing, along with the flagpole on the museum. So we were up there and doing some work and noticed that it was quite unstable. So we've removed it now, and are gonna be doing additional investigation to understand how it was actually up there, how it was, installed. I believe they've removed it anyways, maybe it's happening this week, but there'll be some work, so we, the museum, the old city hall will be without a flagpole and a flag for such time that we can figure out how to repair it, get it back up there.
I just have a Josephine question.
Yes.
Sure.
I can save it till 7.
No.
So I go up and down that street often, on Monday mornings on my way to yoga, and where the temporary, rapid implementation little button that I press to get across the street, we now have a beautiful bump out. What I didn't see, and I maybe need a better understanding on that, is most of the intersections have the little bumpy yellowness. So that, for me, that's 3 different things. That's our commitment to accessibility in the built environment. It's thinking about our commitment to age-friendly city and the thought around dementia city. Those are, to me, critically important at those intersections. So I'm not understanding, will they be added later?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming it had to have been in the design, and I know there was a bit of a switch up there. And then it's the same at Baker Street, so those sort of paved intersections are what we're gonna be going with right now?
No, for the very short term, so
Okay.
that's just to have smooth transition currently. Concrete work will be done on those proper letdowns.
Okay.
We don't have the yellow anywhere else on Baker Street. I'll have to find out what the standards are for the yellow bumps.
Okay, I just would, maybe,
We
yeah,
did that on Hall Street when Hall Street was done.
Yeah, and we did yellow bumps on one side of that intersection there.
Yeah, I thought it was standard, so that's what I'm just trying to understand, is that not something we are moving ahead with our accessible built environment? Or is there something else that's newer, cause I also just read a book about a blind person, so now I'm sort of looking at everything and being more aware of what that would be like. Okay.
Any further questions for staff? I'll just look over at you, Mr. Jury, we're still solvent?
I'll use the time slot when we do the tax rate bylaw to just mention a couple things.
Okay, perfect. Okay. If I could have a motion to recess, moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward, all those in favor, and that carries. Councillor Lochtenberg will be back in chambers at 7 if you're still with us there, and hopefully you're feeling a bit better.
Thanks, Mayor. We'll see you at 7.
Sorry, I'm just
Thank
thinking
you.
about being held to the
Okay, well, if I could have a motion to reconvene, please. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate, all those in favor? And that carries. Councillor Lochtenberg, could you just confirm that you are back with us, just so we can?
I am.
Okay, thank you. So our next item up is, we're at item number 9 and requests. And we have a request regarding the mural at Lakeside Park. The Nelson District Arts Council, NDAC, has requested the council permit 3 murals to be painted on city-owned property. Council is now requested to approve or deny the use of the city-owned sites for the proposed designs. And I think this is all in your package.
Mayor?
Okay, moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Payne. Any discussion? Seeing none?
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious, well, the proponent is here, but I'm curious that the items that have been chosen are an older concrete. And I was wondering about how do you prepare an older concrete to hold paint, or does it just hold paint? Is it different than other surfaces?
No, we put like a sealant, like a primer on top of everything before we do anything on top. If there's any existing paint, we use like wire scrubbers, and we totally prep the surface area first, and then yeah, we work on it after that. But
Okay.
Nothing, yeah, it should be okay. We've checked them all out in advance.
Okay, so
Sorry,
thank you for the motion that we approve that somebody in the audience talks in the
apologize.
business meeting, but
Sorry.
that's okay. That saved going through 3 motions, so,
Sorry. I was just curious because of their older surfaces, so.
Yeah. perfectly good and interesting question, but,
Sorry, I apologize.
okay, that's okay. So seeing that there's no other questions perhaps towards staff, or if there's more questions for Sydney, we will ask for a motion to give her freedom of the floor.
Sorry, Mayor.
Anyhow, Councillor Tate.
Can I have a motion for freedom of the floor, because I do have a question.
Okay, that's been moved by you, seconded by Councillor Page. All those in favor, and that carries. Come on up and take a chair.
Legally.
Hi, sorry, hi. Thanks for coming, thanks for presenting this. I had a curiosity because I noticed that we have lots of murals, obviously, and then you have applications for the mural festival, but I was curious, because some of these are local folks who work like at NDAC and those sorts of things. So how do you go through the applications and decide what we're gonna request?
Absolutely. So this isn't a mural festival
I know.
mural, so there's separate funding streams that we receive. So Mural Festival murals are all juried fully. So they have a curator who goes through it first, then a jury, then it goes to the CDC. Whereas our funding where we receive just private funding, or not private funding, public funding, but for individual projects, we have a bit more control over the work that we're doing. In this case specifically, we're working with the Inchlim Language House, so with the Snipes Confederacy crew, and they're bringing up a group of 10 students who are going to be creating this mural in conjunction with Indigenous youth from School District 8, who are in Trafalgar, LBR, and Wildflower, as well as some homeschooled youth. So it's a really exciting option and opportunity. And so the Amber was selected by those youth. So that conversation is like a reflection of those chats with the youth and who would be appropriate to be leading a project like that as well, and who has those skills. So that's how we came to that.
Thank you.
Very exciting. Any further questions for Sydney? I was just about to call you Councillor Black.
Oh, it's because I've been here too much lately, friends. I know.
You would be in conflict.
Yeah, you would be in conflict like every meeting.
I know, exactly. I'd never be here. It'd be awesome for you.
You'd miss us.
Yeah. Did you have a question? No. Okay. So I think they look interesting and lovely to hear about the Indigenous engagement. So all those in favor? And that carries, and opposed? Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9B, Nelson at its Best grant sponsorship. Nelson at its Best has requested that the City of Nelson act as an eligible applicant for a 2026 Plan H Healthy Communities grant application under the Community Connectedness stream. If approved, the city's role would be limited to sponsorship and administration of the funds, while Nelson at its Best would lead project delivery, engagement, reporting, and financial tracking. The grant requested is for up to $5,000 and does not require a direct financial contribution from the city. We have a recommendation before us. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. Councillor Woodward.
The council approved the request by Nelson at its Best Society to act as a sponsor for the application to the Plan H Healthy Communities Grant Program for the purposes of completing a volunteer hub feasibility refresh, and for the Nelson at its Best Society complete and submit the application.
Okay, that's approved and seconded. Is there any comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Okay, moving on. We have no delegations tonight. Bylaws, so annual tax rate, the fun stuff. Each year, City Council approves a 5-year financial plan which establishes the annual budget and priorities. An annual tax rate bylaw is also required to collect the appropriate funds to finance these activities. The annual tax rate bylaw number 3663, 2026 received first 3 readings on April the 28th, 2026, and is now presented for adoption. So there's a recommendation before us. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate. And I'm just gonna ask for Mr. Jury for some comments before we vote.
No, thank you, Mayor. So yeah, this represents kind of that final piece of our financial planning process for 2026. Our statutory deadline is May 15th to have all of this completed, so today's May 12th. It's a good job there. So yes, we have to have a 5-year financial plan adopted by May 15th, tax rate bylaw, all of our financial reporting for the prior year completed and the audit completed, and all of those documents sent off to the province, and that's all done. So I just want to thank you all for helping us get through that process and getting us to where we are today. The next step after this will be to send those tax notices out to folks. What we're waiting on now is just that final requisition letter from the province for school taxes. So we have the rates. I always like to wait until we actually get the letter. When you're sending out 4,500 tax notices, I like to triple, quadruple check that everything is accurate and correct before we start mailing those out to folks. So I like to have that to be able to go through and just confirm that balances are correct. So we should be getting that any day now. And then the plan would be to print those tax notices next week and then get them out the door the week of the 25th, so the final week of May. So people should start seeing them in their mailbox at the end of May. And I think we have some communication planned with the comms department there to put something out in the newspaper and let people know about taxes and where you can claim your homeowner grant and due dates and all of that information as well.
Now, what is the due date this year? I'm just gonna.
Yeah, so July 2nd, I think it's maybe a
July 2nd this
Wednesday.
year?
Wednesday or Thursday?
There's some changes to the homeowner grant.
That'll be for next
Next
year,
year.
2027.
More bad news.
Yes, I believe they're removed the rural and northern homeowner grant portion, which was that extra $200
$200,
everybody got.
So that homeowner's grant will be decreasing by $200 in 2027. And just while we're on that, just further, I mean, I don't want people to get confused, but I was down discussing some issues that are affecting our local seniors with our deputy CFO, Amy, the other day, when she highlighted this reduction next year of another $200. But talking about the fact that that you can pay your taxes spread out over, I think a lot of people don't realize that, and I think it's important that we keep reminding people that, so that they're not suddenly on June the 30th going, where am I supposed to find, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to pay a bill? And so they can do payments over the year coming up to that date. They don't have to have it perfectly, but there is, I found that we actually have a calculation that'll get you pretty darn close to what your taxes might be, and then, whatever the residual is then you have a much smaller bill that you're paying in, say, that last month. So I think that's in these times when times are tough, and unfortunately, taxes continue to go up and other costs continue to go up, that perhaps spreading it out over the course of the year is a better way to look at your paying your tax bill on a go-forward basis. So something to contemplate. Got to get through this round, but for sure, for people that haven't considered that before, to be considering that starting in basically August and then rolling forward to July of 2026. I've got Councillor Page, then I've got Tate, and then I've got Payne.
And just for clarity, that you would pay your 2026 taxes and you'd start that to accumulate towards next year's taxes.
Yeah, that's why I just want to get it confusing,
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, this was just as good an opportunity to start trying to have some of that discussion around paying them.
Thanks for reminding everybody of that program. Obviously, it's an option people can exercise. I'm curious, thinking about the automation and kind of preferring or pre-deciding, do we have a form developed that goes out with this letter? Is there a way we can say, hey, just fill this out and we will take your first payment of your next, program, like make the payment part of the sign up process, that you are almost, the inertia is more that you are gonna sign up for it because it's all pre-populated, ready to go, assuming you want to, or at least prompting during that transaction, hey, do you want your first payment for next year to start in August? So it's one transaction, because you just know that is more effective at converting to that kind of setup.
Yeah.
So do we have a form and can we do
Yep,
that? Is
got a
that work we can do
form,
that?
our CSRs give that to everybody who's paying their taxes. If they're not on the program, they encourage them to sign up at that time. We have information on the tax notice on the back as well, if you wanna go on there, and all the information is available exactly like you say. It's a form you fill out. We
But
calculate
it's a
that
separate
out for
process, right?
you. Yes.
Okay, no, I would just, it'd be nice in going into future years if we could try to bring them into a process that's attached to itself.
That
So that you're
you,
paying,
by default, you would be in it?
well, that the inertia would be, that when you're doing one thing, you're almost doing the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is a choice people have to
opt-out
do it, or not do it. But if we're moving to an opt-out, that would be a
I don't think we
Yeah.
have.
change.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's a large variety of implementation.
Yeah.
Nudging things closer
Sure.
to that could have huge impacts.
Yeah, I think we
That's
do,
beyond just a complete opt-out.
I think we do a good job every year, and if you look at the stats, we increase the number of folks that are on that every year, so, yeah.
And I was assured that the CSRs, so if I'm coming in to pay the bill, with my rolled coins on June 30th, that I'm being asked, like, there is that moment where that so I'm not coming back another day, that I could be potentially doing that, and I think that's a good starting place. I understand the CSRs do that downstairs, but it was just something
We can look at, can we print that, that all your information shows up there? Is that kind of some of the things you're suggesting?
Here's what I'd imagine. Like, even just in this conversation, if you're starting out with the interaction of like, hey, we have a program you can sign up monthly to do your thing, and I could take your first payment for last year, but I can also sign you up for the once, and do you wanna fill that form out? Or do you wanna fill out the form where you just do a one-time payment? Like, even that change is like, oh yeah, I'll fill out the one, cause it's still one task. And even though there's a few more buttons and boxes to be filled out.
QR code.
No, because that would get scammed.
Okay.
But even that shift in how you ask about it
Yeah.
could change like a huge swath. It
Yeah,
could get you
I get
major
that.
conversion.
And there's no reason why someone couldn't transition that over a few years, right? Like,
Yeah,
if
that
you-
was my
if all
other
you
thought
could
too.
afford right now is $50 a month, and
Yeah, for
then
sure.
you've paid half of it by, tax time next year, and then maybe,
Start getting the 10% off.
and then maybe you can, now this year, cause I only have to come up with $2,000, I can pay $100 next year, and I'm all the way there.
Once you're in the program, we calculate for you and estimate what your next year's is gonna be, but you can always reduce that if you want to.
pay any amount, and
Just
you can
never
join
forget
in,
that thing.
you can join in November.
Yeah.
Like, so a new homeowner could, like, start that as well. So anyways, it was just a great conversation I had downstairs yesterday. Councillor Payne?
What's the cost?
What's the cost?
Prepay?
Prepay, nothing.
Nothing.
In fact,
Well, it depends,
interest.
we try to calculate what your
Okay, maybe I'm mistaken,
monthly
I
payment
thought
would
for
be,
the,
so when your taxes come, your balance, in a perfect world is zero, but there may be something owing.
I thought when we signed up for water and storm, there was a charge on top of that.
No.
So no, it's just equally divided.
Yep.
That's good to know too then,
No charge.
no charge.
Councillor Tate?
And don't forget to pay on time, there is no mercy
Yeah, there is no mercy for being late.
And do
from
not,
experience.
do not come June 30th, come. Please bring the check.
And I know I ask every year, but is there technology now that we can actually send these out, not in an envelope with postage on them, or?
Yeah. It's a good question, and I'm not sure what the legal requirement is for, I suppose you could opt in to having it sent to electronically, I'm sure, but could we mandate
we don't
that
get a
everyone
hydro bill
receives it
anymore.
electronically? I don't know that we could, but we could move in the direction where you have that as an option. What we're limited to currently is likely our software, but
You have to
Something
also have
like
to
that.
opt in, right? Yeah. No, we signed up to get our bill for Nelson Hydro online, so now we don't have to worry about, we have several different names in our household, so does the mailman always get it in the right box? Does it always, wouldn't wanna miss the tax bill, that's for sure. But the emails do generally go to the right box. Don't miss those. Yep. And there's an expense involved with the mail out.
for sure.
And just while we're talking about dates and such, I was just sent a little reminder to also take the opportunity to remind everybody that today your census was due. And if you haven't got it filled out, please make sure you go home and fill it out. And I guess, I don't think there's a cutoff if you don't wake up until tomorrow to fill it out. Get it done, because when we talk about money and we talk about grants, and we talk about infrastructure, and we talk about all the things that we talk about here at this table, having accurate census numbers are really important. I've heard people saying, I'm not filling it out, the government doesn't need my information, and you're shortchanging yourself and your community if you don't fill it out, and suddenly our population looks like it's 8,000 when it's 12,000. Grants and many things and future planning by other levels of government are done by the use of that census information, so it's important to fill it out, so. Okay, so then all those in favor of the resolution regarding the annual tax rate bylaw? All those in favor, opposed? And that carries.
Did we move and read?
Yeah, right at the very beginning, before I let
Thank you.
Mr. Jury speak.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. So wait for that exciting envelope in your mailbox coming to you soon. Item number 12, recommendations from staff. So Anderson Fell Creek detailed hazard and risk assessment. So the city of Nelson retained BCG Engineering Inc. to complete a hazard and risk assessment of Anderson and Fells Creek. Staff have provided a summary of the information provided in the report and now ask that council receive the report and its associated recommendations. So council, I don't need to remind you that we spent from 4:30 until 6 having an updated report from BCG Engineering and our staff. And so if I could get, thank you, Councillor Page.
Yes.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Page.
That council received the Anderson Creek Detailed Hazard and Risk Assessment Report and the recommendations contained therein, and, do you put them together?
Yep.
Okay. That council directs staff to review the recommendations and incorporate the appropriate actions into future work plans and budgets for council's consideration.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. We have staff here. Again, if there's any further questions, we have Valerie and Natalie both here. Did you have anything else, staff, that you wish to add at this point, or vision of how you see it all working, or?
Maybe, a reminder for anyone who was not able to view the presentation earlier that the recording is available on the City of Nelson website, and we also have 2 dedicated web pages on the Let's Talk platform with lots of resources, so we really encourage people to access these resources and explore the topic in more detail, and if they have any questions, they can reach out to staff.
Excellent. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Tate, then Councillor Payne.
Thanks. My question is for staff. Was there anything here that surprised you? Because we've been looking at this for a number of years, and this is like phase 4 of the report, and it's got the recommendations. Was there anything there that surprised you based on the information we had prior to this?
I'd say probably in a good way. Like, I think the results of the study were pretty encouraging. And also just seeing that there are some pretty low-hanging fruits, like easy mitigation measures that we can implement and would considerably reduce the risk for some areas. That was cool.
Councillor Payne, and then, or do you have a follow-up?
It's separate.
Okay, Councillor Payne.
I was just interested because when we started this whole process back in 2022, sort of working with the RDCK. So is that collaborative work going on, or is this focus that you've recently done strictly within the boundaries of Nelson? And how does that work in the bigger ecosystem of the region, I guess?
I think at the time we were trying to collaborate with the RDCK for a joint study of the Cotton Creek, but they also had already applied for their portion of the grants to do another study, so it didn't work. But we are still in contact with them and we'll be working with them on future studies.
Cause I mean, watersheds are, kind of.
Regional consideration. We've also shared these reports with them, and we are in contact with them, Dan and Nelson, to CK and work on this. And so we're in close contact with them, updating them, and also looking for opportunities to partner and work together on future projects.
Yeah, and I just wanna say that the report, at 267 pages is a little intimidating, but if you love maps the way that I do, you can flip through and there's a bunch of really cool maps in there, really demonstrating this situation in a visual way that I thought was particularly interesting.
Council Porter for a second time and then back to Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Mayor. I was gonna say a comment in the sense of when I was reading this over, the integration between the OCP, which we just completed, Nelson Next, and this report all working together is, it just gives me like a lot of confidence that we're really doing some great planning work and that we're trying to mitigate and get ahead of things, which is, it's for a town our size, it's great work. So, and I feel like it's that really solid emergency management mindset that I've seen the city dig deep into in the last 5-6 years. Definitely like getting really involved ahead of the game. So I want to thank you all for the hard work. Probably a lot of slogging, but it's nice to see this kind of completion happening, and now we're kind of ready to move forward in a great way. Thank you.
Councillor Tate.
I guess it almost bounces off my previous question, which is you shared this with staff and infrastructure folks. What was their reaction to the low-hanging fruit? I'm sure you kind of collaborated and consulted as it rolled out. Similar, like optimism?
They were respond and include that in their current work plan, so.
No, like, oh, but there's this one big speed bump in terms of our capacity or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think as we, the low hanging fruit, so, the design and work on the berm, that is something that's like really has the single greatest impact, right? There's the debris rack that is part of that phase 1 as well. We currently have a debris rack. We currently have a plan to remove debris when it gets clogged up there. So currently it's right at the opening of the culvert, which is not a great place to put those. It should be higher up. Probably still have one there after just in case, but so increasing the height of the berm is relatively straightforward, and it has a very large impact on reducing the number of homes exposed to risk or exposed to the hazard. So that's good. I think as you start looking at increasing the capacity of conveyance capacity, those are larger civil projects. Those are replacing culverts, which are functionally bridges, right? So as we move through that process, that will be something that as city manager had mentioned is currently theorized as grant focused, and our organization will be able to absorb those projects as they come along, as the planning windows open up for those. So feeling pretty confident. Yeah, it's certainly a couple of years ago wasn't in our longer term plans to upsize these culverts at as opportunities arise, but it is now. So
great.
It's kind of how we have to roll with it.
Thank you.
Any further questions or concerns? Okay.
Just one piece of trivia, the 1974 flooding, does anyone remember what that was caused by?
The lake levels?
Yeah. Oh, it was just a different way of controlling the dam water, or was it?
I think it's just like I was here in 2012.
12, yeah.
We had, so much snow and they held back as much water as they could in the dams, and
it's just growing narrows.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just so much inflow.
Yeah.
That's outside of dam control that's
So much of the time we focus on how the climate is changing and how it's affecting these things, but obviously there's historical precedents for some of these events.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and our lake, you know, it remains a lake because of Groman, so, you know, it can
And they looked
lose
at
control.
dredging the narrows, right, to increase that flow out of the lake here, and that wasn't accepted by community, so
Not yet.
not yet, yeah.
Well,
Okay, just
the
as I
Corlin
said,
is
just
under review
curious.
again currently, so, and that bridge,
We had,
that channel has been crossed, and so we'll see what the results of that
we had water, you know, the lake level was up to the,
tracks.
you know, the pathway at the Prestige, that's how high the water was. The airport was flooding,
The soccer
So
fields
just
were flooded.
melting,
Soccer fields
melting
were
rain,
flooded.
dam release, yeah.
just, that whole,
all at
it
once.
all comes down at once and.
Yep.
and-
Okay. So wildly beyond our control.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
So all those in favor of the motion and opposed, and that carries. Okay, and we have one more pertaining to our earlier workshop. So the city retained BGC Engineering Inc. and PINA Sustainability Incorporation to review how natural hazard information is currently identified, documented, and applied within planning, development, and permitting processes, and identified opportunities to improve clarity, consistency, and alignment with current technical standards and best practice. Building on the city's established approach to flood and steep creek hazard management, the resulting roadmap provides a phased framework to guide future refinements to policy, procedures, and guidance, with a focus on improving the application of existing hazard information rather than introducing new regulations. Overall, the work supports more consistent and defensible decision-making over time. Council is now being asked to receive the report for information. So we have a recommendation there, Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate. Councillor Woodward.
The council received the Hazard and Risk Management Policy Roadmap Recommendations Report, and further that council directs staff to consider the report recommendations as part of future work planning and to return to council with proposed priorities and timing.
Okay, any further questions for staff regarding the presentations that we've seen today and heard over the course of several years now?
Maybe just, Natalie, any sense of when you guys will be able to bring that back in terms of prioritization?
I think we were talking about looking at it this fall and incorporating it into our work plans for next year. And in the interim, I think we will use the policies and the guidance in there as a bit of a roadmap for reviewing applications. But for the most part, I think it will be business as usual while we're considering these, so.
And I do see that there's a communications plan sort of attached here in terms of making sure that we've touched all the right people that need to know, and then encouraging them to use the Let's Talk page or other things going forward, so. Councillor Payne.
I'm just interested, I'm surprised that we haven't heard from more residents. Have you been hearing from residents about this? Well, that's good, they must feel confident.
People reached out about, mainly they're wondering how it's gonna impact, you know, development or if they wanna do renovations, so I think that's the question.
Because, yeah, one of the resources on the Let's Talk page was the article in the which was pretty interesting about how these sorts of releases have affected communities across Canada. Wasn't quietly. So it's interesting. So that's great. Must be a lot of confidence out there that we're.
Yeah, and I anticipate that after this has been received by council, that likely we will receive some more phone calls and people asking questions. So we've kind of anticipated that and built that into our work plan for the next few weeks. And so we are happy to talk to anybody who does have any questions.
But I mean, it is excellent resources in my, I looked at the both Let's Talk pages and there's a lot of excellent information there. So it's a good place to direct people to, because they'll hopefully be able to answer one of those questions.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that carries. Anybody opposed? Good, thank you. Moving on to variance request. for 1404 Selby Street. Development Services is requested,
Number C?
wait,
Skip
sorry,
C.
318 Anderson, sorry.
They've been
I
here
got
for so
carried
long.
away with my tick mark, sorry, because I ticked the next thing down even though there was on the list. My apologies. So the temporary use permit for 318 Anderson Street. So Development Services has received a temporary use permit application. I bet you guys were nervous back there for a second. For the property located at 318 Anderson Street, the application shown in attachment 1 seeks permission to allow dental services in the existing building. Under the property's HC1 highway commercial zoning, the dental services is not listed as a permitted use. As such, TUP is required to allow the proposed use. Staff recommend council approve the temporary use permit to allow the applicant to operate dental services at the above mentioned address for a period of 3 years. So there's a recommendation there. Councillor, does somebody want to move it? Moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Whitworth. Councillor Payne.
The council approved temporary use permit file number 2606001 to allow the applicant to operate a dental services in the existing building located on lot 5, block 3, district lot 96, Kootenai District Plan 248B, 318 Anderson Street.
Okay, councillors, did you have any questions? I see staff has come to the table. Do we have any concerns? Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, reading over this this agenda piece, I mean that particular piece has gone through quite a few different variations, attempts of businesses and such. So, but it feels like this could be very, what's the word, cogent? Like it really, like because of I think the one thing that was challenging at that spot is that parking piece for people coming in, but with as it was described in here, the kind of one every hour or something, it seems like very manageable. So I'm hoping that this is a very positive move for that lot.
Any other further comments or questions, councillors? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Thank you, councillors. Okay, now I'll move on to variance for 1404 Selby Street. Development Services has received a development variance permit application for 1404 Selby Street. The purpose of the application is to allow a reduced front yard setback to facilitate the construction of a garage addition to an existing carport. The applicant is requesting the following variance under zoning bylaw number 3652/2026. Reduce the minimum front lot line setback from 3 meters to 0.6 meters. And as a result of the reduced front setback, permit eaves to project further into the front yard setback, allowing them to be located 0.15 meters from the front lot line instead of 0.9 meters. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council approve the requested variances.
I'll move it, Mayor.
Okay. And is there a seconder? Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate. Councillor Woodward.
Just gonna get to that spot, here we are. All right, the application for a development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3652/2026 for the purposes of building a garage addition be approved for a lot A, plan NEP 22899, district lot 96, Kootenai Land District, 1404 Selby Street as follows. Part 10, section 1.12, minimum setback, reduce the minimum front lot line setback from 3.0 meters to 0.6 meters. And part 5, section 5, exceptions of city requirements for eaves. As a result of the reduced front setback, permit eaves to project further into the front setback, allowing them to be located at 0.15 meters from the front lot line instead of 0.9 meters.
Better you than me.
Yeah.
Question, Councillor Tate.
Thanks so much for this. Thanks for all the details. The 0.6 feels really close to the road, but then there's also that city infrastructure right there as well. Can you speak at all? I know this is a really narrow space. Can you speak at all to like some potential challenges that have been considered, like, I don't know, fire access? Cause that brings you quite close to an already narrow looking road.
The proposal was referred to the fire department and also to public works for consideration with utility access, and they haven't identified any, adverse impacts or concerns. The clearance around the fire hydrant is maintained. They specify that the driveway, like the work around the driveway would have to be kept as is. And then from a public works perspective, the shut-off valves are right on the property line, so they will remain accessible.
Garbage. All good.
I was just gonna add, I think the property line to the actual built road is still quite a distance.
Okay.
The road right of way is usually around 18 meters. I think the distance between the property line and the actual road is over 6 meters.
Oh, so there's a boulevard.
Yeah, there's a
Oh.
really wide space, so you're not right up against the road. So that's another
Interesting.
reason we like Public Works and Emergency Services didn't have a concern with it as well.
No, that was not clear to me. That's so helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have to go there and look at it. It's really, I had to stare at it up there for quite some time.
Should have added the
Oh.
line on the picture.
I see. Between the edge of Selby Street and the light blue on page 4, that's all boulevard,
City.
so to speak. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, okay, and that the fire hydrant is right up against the road, but this, I'm with you. Thank you.
Any further questions? I don't want to rush this. I want people to make sure that they're comfortable with it. I was kind of like, okay, the driveway is really close to the fire hydrant and but
And then just past that is the rail trail.
up above it.
Intersects though.
It's-
No.
Rail trails, again, it's quite steep in there.
Yeah.
Rail trails up above.
Yeah, I always thought this house had an address on Regent Street, so I mean, it's just like when you go there, it's like, is this on Regent, this is on Selby, and it's like, okay, this is Selby Street. So seeing no further questions, so the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And opposed, and that carries. Okay, moving on to 12E. So straddle title conversion of existing residential building at 517 Hoover Street. An application for strata title conversion has been received for the previously occupied duplex at 517 Hoover Street. The application would allow for the creation of 2 strata units in a building currently used for rental housing. In accordance with section 242 of the Strata Property Act, attachment 1, council is approving authority for the strata title conversion of previously occupied buildings. As part of the review process, the application has been circulated to the planning, building, and engineering departments to ensure that the property complies with all applicable bylaws. These requirements have been substantially completed. This report requests council's approval of the strata title conversion for the subject property. Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Tate.
The council passes the following resolution. Can they go together?
No.
Okay. Number 1, that pursuant to section 242 of the Strata Property Act, the conversion of the previously occupied building located at lot 16, block 46, district lot 95, Kootenai District Plan 9500, PID 012-264-393 into strata lots be approved, subject to a housing covenant be first first being registered on the title of one of the owner's adjacent parcels in a form satisfactory to both the applicant and the city, restricting the tenure of the future units to rental housing for a minimum period of 5 years. Thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was a bit confused. This is quite a complex problem here. My confusion was, if we okay with this, the applicant will put a title on another lot for a minimum of 5 years, but what if nothing is built on the other lot for 5 years?
Yeah, so we had a bit of discussion back and forth. I think I had mentioned in the report that the property owners were aware of their error. They weren't aware that stratification of existing buildings requires council approval. So we were trying to be reasonable, knowing that, you know, if they had done this before they had received occupancy on 517 Hoover, they wouldn't be going through this process. And then we have to square that with the fact that our OCP is very clear that we simply do not support stratification of rental buildings. So we had some back and forth and ultimately we landed on that. We do recognize that there might be a possibility that they don't build, but that's sort of the risk that we take, because otherwise the option would have simply been for us to recommend not approving it. We don't want to be punitive in this sort of situation, considering it was an error.
Okay.
So they bought this property to develop, and so basically they're a small developer. They build these units, sell them off, take that money, invest in the next units. That was their plan, and they needed to, you know, to create some cash flow in the in between. They rented, you know, these units out and didn't realize that, you know, as soon as they do that, then they trigger this requirement to come to council to stratify that. If they knew that, they would have done that in the first place, because they don't have the money to build that next lot. So I think from staff's point of view, that getting additional housing is what's important. And, you know, they have communicated that, you know, they do see one of these properties being sort of their rental or their retirement income to rent out one of the properties on a long-term basis, but, you know, they also recognize things can change in your life and don't want to be fully committed to that, but that's what they communicated as their plan. They want to build out this property, and the last property they would like to retain 1 or 2 units to rent out and pull that income stream down.
Sure, supplemental.
Thank you. So in reality, it wasn't like they built it to be rental and then changed. It was they built it originally to be sold. They made an error. So it's not like rental property was pulled from the pool.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you very much.
And add to that 5-year period would only start after occupancy is granted. So you were saying, what if they don't build for 5 years, then the clock doesn't start ticking, basically. So it will be, once they receive the occupancy, then we apply that 5-year
Okay.
minimum.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Page.
There's a few questions this is bringing up. I'm not opposed to what's going on here and the work you guys have done as a proponent on this particular one, but lifting conversations we'd had in the past around a strata policy, an actual document. There's a few principles here of transferring for a limited term to this other new property. Is that an appropriate trade-off? Do we need that in there? There's a value being expressed in this report that we want to, you know, facilitate a small developer being able to get that momentum into the next project and the next project. And so do we want to provide that clarity that our OCP does around what our values when it comes to stratification are? And I can imagine there's got to be other examples going through planning. So my flag from before and now is I'm happy to support this. I do want to see us develop something more formal in terms of what our strata policy is and get that through council consent and try and balance that in a broader picture, because there are still going to be pieces where people try to make these conversions. And I wanna support the developers making the new units, and I wanna support the retention of purpose-built rental. And I think we have to have more language than just what we have now for these kinds of situations. And I don't know if that's already on a work plan, or we need a motion of council, or if everyone's like, no, this is good, let's pick it off one at a time.
It's not currently on our work plan, but if council would like to
And we are asking you to do it by resolution.
okay.
Yeah, we're not adding anything to your work plan without a resolution.
That's the route I was going.
Yeah.
Cause some of these things in here under the section 242, you know, like relocation plans and what does priority of rental over privately owned mean, like we need to flesh that out into more of a policy.
I think that takes some time, but if somebody, once we get through this, wants to put another motion on the floor. But I mean, it sounds like it's a bit of work, so whether or not it's on the 2026 work plan might be a bit of a challenge. Councillor Payne.
I guess my major concern with this was that we do have a small developer who doesn't understand that. You know, they seem to be building to move forward like this, but they didn't understand the rules. So is that not generally well understood in the building community? Do we need to do a better job of that? Or it just gave me the sense, well, why, if that's the way they're doing their business, why didn't they understand that?
I think
That just gave me a few questions about,
yeah, we flagged that, and you know, so when a building permit comes in like this, then we flagged it to make sure that they understand this requirement if they're not gonna stratify up front.
yeah, okay. But I appreciate you working with the proponent and coming up with a solution. I think we all are very clearly focused on the idea of having rental and owned properties in town in whatever form across the spectrum is, you know, one of the key opportunities that we need to bring forward. So thank you for that work.
Anybody? Councillor Tate.
Yeah, I riff off that. I think that you're understanding well the balance, and I really appreciate you interpreting the will of the table, which sometimes varied. Stratifying a small property like this that could be considered the missing middle doesn't necessarily mean it won't continue to be a rental. So I appreciate this. I think this is a good trade-off for now. And I hope that we can continue to build small strata units like this as well. I think both are needed. Yeah, because people need that first step into the owner's market.
I guess I really struggle significantly with this request because this builder has other properties, so I don't think that they're all that new. It's not like I suddenly decided I was gonna build properties and have made this decision, and so I am quite concerned about this, and one of the concerns I have about this going forward is, well, one thing is that we just spent 2 years during the OCP where we said maybe we shouldn't be doing this. One of the long-term problems I see is where we're gonna start to see people coming in and perhaps trying to stratify their ADUs, and that we will see this building for investment, not really for what I keep hearing around this table, the need for all of this rental housing. And that there's, you know, people are always allowed to make money, and if real estate is one way that you do it, then more power to you, I guess. But I do worry about the fact that we're gonna see increased asks for this kind of stratification, where we're gonna have little tiny houses with little tiny pieces of ground and all kinds of issues. And one of the issues I have there is in terms of meeting the code, because, you know, ADUs are supposed to be attached to the water and other systems, and then how do you branch those off, and are we digging up everybody's backyard to somehow give them separate metering ability and such, and I do, I just needed a little bit of clarification here in terms of, as part of the review process, the applicant has been circulated with the planning, building, and engineering departments to ensure the property complies with all applicable laws. These requirements have been substantively completed. So is this actually a property that can be sold as two standalone units? What hasn't been done yet to make this substantively complete?
So the last piece would be if council approves the resolutions that are in the report, the approving officer would have to review all the relevant information and then do the final sign off on behalf of the city. So perhaps we shouldn't have put the word substantive in there, but everything has pretty much been done except for the council approval and then the approving officer.
Okay, so these two units are safe in terms of fire and fire separation and everything else in terms of going ahead with a strata. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I just don't have a comfort level.
And just as a point of clarification, I will say section 242 of the Strata Property Act doesn't really allow any leniency. It simply says it has to comply with the building code. So our senior building official did look at the property and looked at the plans and said there have not been substantial changes in the building code since 2003. Because ultimately, and this was part of our discussions back and forth with the applicant, you know, because the Strata Property Act says you have to have a building report, we tried to offer some flexibility to the applicant, and the building official looked and said there weren't any substantive changes in the building code in the past 2-3 years. So to answer your question, it complies with the building code.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodward.
We were talking around the table here that there could be a third piece on the recommendation that we look into formalizing this process rather than one-off.
We'll do it after.
We'll do it after?
That would be after.
Okay,
These, we can't make a new rule book and then tell people that they have to play by it,
absolutely. I
right?
understand. I just wanna make sure that we're gonna cover that ground at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, those are my concerns. I really see this as creep. I mean, this builder is gonna build some more lots potentially. I'm pretty sure he'll remember to put the subdivision in. And then again, there's no guarantee that they are rentals 5 years. This trigger, they're still, doesn't mean that everything he builds is a rental. One of them could be a rental, the other ones could be sold off. I just feel that this is a bit of creep, so I just wanted to make my position known. So there we go. So we have got number 1 on the table and it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further, Councillor Payne?
I'm just looking here quickly, but if the property is sold, does the covenant go with it? It does, doesn't it? Yeah, sorry.
The register
My
of title.
question.
I'm just confused by the statement, because the building is new. It's recently constructed.
Yeah.
So where's the creep part? For something new like that? I thought that was a big part of the report that's new and they would have done this at the beginning anyway, and there's a trade-off now, but I'm just, how is this?
But there's lots of new buildings being built. There's lots of people building ADUs. There's people that are building, and are we gonna see more duplexes applying for subdivision? We're allowing this one, are we going to allow more? So I'm talking about creep in that
Talking about the permissive.
fashion. So there,
Yeah, fair
you know,
enough. Okay.
this has been rental housing since it's been built.
Okay, I got you.
And I mean, and Councillor Page, I hear you often saying the need for rental
That's right, you do
units.
often hear that from me, defending the affordable life here in Nelson.
So anyways, it's been moved. And second, Councillor Lockenberg, did you have any comments? Everybody's had a comment, so
No, I'm good, thanks.
just don't want to leave you out. I haven't seen your hand pop up. Anyhow, It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of recommendation number 1? And opposed? And that carries. And so we have recommendation 2. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate.
That the authority to exercise the power and performance of duties required under section 242 of the Strata Property Act to allow for the stratification of existing buildings, lot 16, block 46, district lot 95, Kootenai District Plan 9500, PI 012-264-393 be delegated to the city's approving officer.
So that's been moved and seconded. Any questions about how the process goes here? Councillor Payne.
I just have a question, I don't know where this relates, I'm sorry, but often we look at development paying for development, so I'm thinking of the considerable staff time that was involved in this. Is there any fee that the proponent pays to cover that to the city?
It is, I believe it was $800 or $900.
In your fees and charges bylaw.
It's in the fees and charges.
Thank you. Strata, I have never looked at a strata conversion fee, but good to know, thanks.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Recommendation number 2, all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Okay. So, did we want to entertain something at this junction, or are we entertaining something?
Yeah, I'm ready to get a resolution for sure. May I?
Yes?
The council directs staff to develop a strata conversion policy for the city of Nelson that protects existing rental stock and encourages future rental tenure. And I'll just leave it at that, won't set a date or anything.
Does that cover what you need? I'm looking at staff.
That's
the direction. Okay, I mean, it's a strata policy. I mean, you guys know the nuts and bolts of it. We're not the experts on that, so. Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Page. Is there a seconder? Councillor Payne. Any further discussion by council?
Just a question, so there's no timeline, so how would that be applied?
It goes on the to-do list.
Yeah.
It's on that would go on the to-do list as opposed to on the work plan list. So remember how we have these action items, so it will be there and it'll have the little fill in the when, who will all be blank, but it's the idea is that we consider that this is an important motion and work that needs to be done by the city as we try to continue to densify and secure and safeguard housing that we have both here as market, non-market, and rental.
Okay, sounds good.
So.
And clarity is good. We can hammer out some of these trickier bits and kind of think about what the impacts would be over time, about why we might have one position or another, and we can get that into a document, and staff are obviously already doing that on an ad hoc basis, but that clarity could be helpful, and maybe there's some values decisions that will come through that process that will be worth considering. But it's pretty open-ended, and the legislation, I'm sure, is very particular. So there's only gonna be so much we can do anyway.
Okay. So that's been moved and seconded. Did anybody need to hear that again? Were you able to capture the? Oh, he sent it to you?
You're gonna send it
I
to me?
can, yeah, I'll send it to you.
You know, I just say Development Services develops a strata conversion policy.
You can, you can put that in.
Oh, yeah, I can.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to, thank you, staff. Thank you. Moving on to item 13. I always do this one wrong. We're gonna try to start with information items. We have reports is the first one that's coming up for me. So we have from the following, we have Development Services, we have Finance, quarterly report, finance accounts payable, corporate services, Q and update, corporate services correspondence memo. The action is to receive for information, 1 through 5. Does somebody wanna move that, or is there something in there that somebody wants to pull out for discussion? Moved by Councillor Woodward, is there a seconder? And then I guess, just let me hold there for a second. Councillor Payne, are you wanting to remove?
Sorry, are the action items 1 through 5? 1 through 5? No.
Yeah, development services, finance, corporate services, corporate services.
That's, I'd like to pull that out for discussion.
Which one would you pull up for
Discussion items?
Action items,
Can
so
we-
you wanna pull out number 4, okay.
Number 4.
So, we've asked for number 4 to be pulled out. Is there, a mover for 1, 2, 3, and 5? Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Seconder? Councillor Tate, all those in favor of action items 1, 2, 3, and 5? Okay, opposed, and that carries. Okay, looking at item number 4, Councillor Payne.
There's just a couple of things on here. Can I just ask questions as it
Sure.
goes through, or anybody else? I'm interested in, I guess, third item from 2025, request BC Transit to run the 99 bus through Government Road. Delegated to Maddie, who will reach out to Jody. Has there been any response on that?
Which, sorry, I'm like.
Third row.
The third item in the 2025 action items, June 3rd, 2025 regular.
That was regarding the market, was it not?
Well, and the new affordable, or the supportive
Oh,
housing.
right, supportive housing, right.
I would have to follow up on that.
Okay, because I mean, that building's opening within a month.
Yeah, it would have to obviously be incorporated into their overall schedule and all that stuff, so there's, I forget how long you need to, we'll have to check
But
when
we
that, when that
requested
timing
it
is.
11 months ago, so.
Yeah, so if we, yeah, I can't remember when those changes happened, but they publish a schedule.
Yeah.
I forget when it is in the year, and we have to meet that timing.
So
just
making
ask
any
you-
We
changes.
just don't know.
Just asking for some clarification, Councillor Payne. You obviously know something the rest of us don't know. I understand that the building will be maybe available to have a tour in a month. I didn't think residents were going to be there till the fall, but perhaps you're more in touch with all those. I just met with Joanne Mata this morning and she didn't mention anything about residents moving in. July,
When I first made this request, June was the time frame, but whether or not
Okay.
it is, I believe June is when the schedules switch over, so that's what I was,
Okay, it's just that when you said that in a month, people are gonna be there, like, I just.
There's
needed
people there
clarification.
now, but they're not living there. But the individuals who require that service will be living there in 2026.
So, to me, what you bring up is important in terms of what our follow through looks like and how we close the gap on those. So I'm sure, and we don't have enough information, I would suspect, to know whether or not Maddie sent an email or not. But the ask is essentially to the Transit Services Committee on whether or not that improvement could happen. That's as big as the task is. It goes to the RDCK, it gets discussed, and there might be big long timelines on whether or not it happens or a disagreement on whether it happens with BC Transit, right? Like, it's not like we just go to BC Transit and say, we're gonna move this.
No,
But
I've gone through a whole process.
So I'm just saying, for me, I would just hope that we're sending the letter to the Transit Services Committee and then that task is off our
Well,
plate.
probably the first thing we do is this, what's the impact that our staff would recognize, would work with BC Transit? Is this viable at all? What's the implication on the rest of the schedule if we do that? Can they safely turn down off the highway onto Granite Road and into there? So I think we do the technical piece. Because BC Transit might just say, there's no way you're gonna turn a transit bus off the highway there with no signal lights on Granite or whatever. We don't know. That to me is the first piece, that there's no point in sending it to the committee if BC Transit goes, this just doesn't work. It doesn't meet any of our standards, so let us do that and find that information out first and but we can, yeah. we will, that's why we created this thing, so we have some accountability that we follow through on some of them, and some of them slide off our radar, and so thanks for, we'll look at that one.
And then I guess the last thing on there is the explore the free veteran parking. There doesn't seem to be anything on there either.
Yeah, this one hasn't really advanced. We did, there was some work that was done when we did the traffic parking strategy at one time with some policy work. We had someone, obviously they come and presented it, I think, a couple times now. And this one probably is, we could pilot something and see what the impact is.
Can I jump in here? We are reviewing the traffic bylaw, and it will be coming for a workshop, I think in June, is what we decided. And that is included in one of the changes that we are recommending. So
Okay, so that could be filled in there, reviewing traffic bylaw?
potentially.
Yeah.
Oh, Rick, yep, go right ahead. Councillor Payne is looking, I think, for another thing on the action items, but if she doesn't mind, I'll let you come on in.
I was going to respond to the issue on the transit and routing 99 down Government Road. I think that's something, given it's an integrated transit system, that should be brought to the West Kootenay Transit Committee. And heads up that the next meeting's June 23rd. So if you want to have some progress on that before the 23rd, that would be, I don't expect we would meet again until the fall, so.
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
So
I guess with I don't understand the sister city, what that outcome means, consideration at a regular meeting.
I think that's when Councilor Pinero brought up whether we should have another sister city relationship. And then we had some, the history, some were initiated by the chamber, some were, initiated by federal government policy, et cetera. I think this was when do we and why do we enter into sister city relationships? And again, there's nothing imminent now, so not a high priority on our list at this stage. But I think that's why we should take some time every so often to review these. Is this important to council anymore? Or should we take it off the list? So.
Yeah, that's the thing. If we're not gonna action them, why would we leave it on the list? I certainly don't on my action item list. If it's something that no longer meets my values or my goals, I just reassess and go, bye.
We can't do that as staff. We need council to.
I thought that's why we brought it forward on a quarterly basis.
And maybe we need to do this at one of the workshop sessions as opposed to at this time.
Okay.
Recommendations.
So then
Have to
what
make
would
some
that process
recommendations
look
on-
like?
Well, I would imagine that if you wanted to say remove that particular action item, I mean, we could vote and that would come off the action item list.
I have a question or a comment or an idea. And I think you're probably saying the exact same idea. So we're just piloting this and trying to make it work, and it's gonna be really great as it gets hammered out. My thought is I think you just said it out loud, add another column of like whether there's been any progress or color coding like green, yellow, red, or we've
talked about that,
just give it a flesh it out a little, so when it comes to us, you can be like, actually, we haven't done that yet, or oh yeah, that got bumped down because there was that sinkhole or whatever, right?
And I think when we talked about this initially in January or February, the idea is that we would bring it then at the end of the year, pre-budget, and you guys, this council would go through them and say, this is not of interest, we don't have an appetite for this anymore, we need budget for this, so this goes to a budget session, or we need it to be added to a staff work plan or something like that, right?
Or it seemed urgent at the time.
Yeah.
Like the Sister City one is a perfect example.
So let's just add it to one of the workshops, because really it's hard to do that
It is,
this
yeah.
point on the agenda. And do that on a quarterly basis and try it on a quarterly basis, and we'll put some more information on that and where they're at. Releasing them as a priority and maybe a little bit more background on where they came from.
Yeah, well, let's just make a note that that one's been flagged, like put a star beside it or something in your next column.
The sister city one?
Yeah, Councillor Payne, continuing, other ones?
I think that was about it. Yeah, I'm just trying to, yeah, as I say, maybe one of the action item needs to be find a way to make this work.
Yeah.
Is what I would say, because putting it in a document for us to review when there isn't a solid, concrete way forward with timelines, SMART goals are.
And some of these come up sort of in the heat of the moment around something happened to be before you, and I think we need to review those after a while and go, yeah, that happened in 25.
Yeah.
That situation isn't the same anymore. Maybe you just want to.
Yeah, and maybe that's the column, review date.
Yeah.
And I think the key here is that the idea here is that to get on this list, it has to be a resolution, so it's not just a passing thing and staff are thinking, now, did they really mean that they wanted to do that, or was that just kind of like an idea? So at least these were a resolution, and they might have been a hot button topic for 10 minutes that night. It could be now it's a on flame item and we really need to get to it, but the things on the action list should have been coming as a resolution through some discussion around the table as opposed to staff just trying to take a guess. And I was sort of thinking now, just following through on what we talked about, as we look at this, we've got the March 24th, 2026 in regards to the Spearhead Timberworks and share housing, which has been now completed. And just to confirm, in the discussions that we had, is that we would see completed items one more time. So this is now completed, so that when I see this action list again, I will not see March 24th, 2026 on here. And did I get that part of it right? Yeah. Because it's been completed. So you get to see the completed once. It'll be in your record, obviously, to go back if you want to, but it will not be on this list going forward. Today was the day to see that.
And if that could be an additional column, date completed, so at least we can understand. Like, I know it's gonna be moving somewhere, but the last time we see it, if we could see what date that was done. So this one says, letter of support provided March 30th, 2026. Do you want more information?
We can just be more clear, I think. I think this is a good first swing, and we have some good feedback, and let us bring it back and see how it looks.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, seeing no other items to be pulled from action item list. Councillor Payne, as you pulled it, can you move it?
I'm moving it to be received as
For information, yes.
We move that the action item list for 2025-26 be received for information.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Woodward. Any further discussion, councillors? Okay, all in favor? And that carries. Okay, those ones are done. Then
Number 5?
we did 1, 2, 3, and 5 together as a bundle. 4 was pulled. Okay, and now we have information items. We have some minutes from other organizations and our own. So Greater Nelson Economic Development Coordinating Committee, November, January, and then the Advisory Committee in December. And we have a Nelson Housing Committee minutes of March the 27th. Does anybody want any of those pulled before we try to pass them for receipt for information? Seeing nobody wanting to pull anything, then moving 1, 2, 3, and 4 for information, Councillor Woodward.
Move.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Page. Any further discussion on any of those minutes, or seeing none, all those in favor of receipt for information, and that carries. Opposed? Okay. Perfect. So notices of motion, no late items. If I could have a resolution to close the meeting to the public. It is the opinion of the council that the public interest requires that persons other than members of council and staff and any approved audiences be excluded from this meeting, and at the special closed meeting of council continue under section 91J and C of the community charter to deal with matters related to the following: information that is prohibited, or information that, if it were presented in a document, would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and labor relations or other employee relations. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Woodward. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Page. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you, council.
Just give me 1 second. No, we need it, cause
Oh, Rick.
Rick,
Oh.
and we need, hang on a
Streaming.
second,
Kill the stream.
just a second.
Sorry. I'm trying to work through it, so yeah.
Okay, good.